Hey guys, tonight we're going way back to a time when castles weren't dreamy Disney backdrops, but actual cold, echoey slabs of medieval misery. Welcome to the world of drafty corridors, stone walls colder than your ex's stare, and beds that felt more like elaborate bear traps than places to rest. You're a princess, sure, but royalty doesn't come with central heating. Nope. You get gowns of velvet and diplomacy, and frostbite. Before we plunge headfirst into this icy slumber party, you probably won't survive this. No, seriously, if you actually time travel to the 1300s, this place would chew you up. The food? Questionable. The hygiene? Let's not. The bed? A splintery four-poster coffin you hope doesn't collapse midnight. But hey, you're royalty, so at least your chamber pot has a gold rim. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Drop your city and what time it is where you are. I always love seeing how far and wide you guys are tuning in. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. It's nightfall and you're in your bedchamber, a room tucked high in a turret, wrapped in shadow and stone. The walls are thick, thicker than your mattress, which to be clear is not a fluffy cloud, but more of a suspiciously lumpy rectangle stuffed with straw, feathers, and the occasional rogue quill. You're 17, daughter of a minor but ambitious noble family, and engaged to some duke you've met twice. Life is weird like that. Your chamber smells of beeswax, wool, and a faint undertone of whatever the kitchen burned for dinner. A single iron sconce on the wall carries a wavering flame, casting long twitching shadows across the stone. It's midwinter, and the wind outside is a constant moan. It slips through every crack, wraps around your ankles, and makes even the tapestries ripple like breathing fabric. You've already kicked your slippers off. They were more decorative than functional anyway, and your toes are doing their best impression of icicles. You move toward the bed. It sits like a giant carved animal in the middle of the room, dark oak, clawed feet, canopy overhead draped in thick embroidered fabric. 4 posters rise like trees, supporting a forest of curtains you'll be pulling closed tight to trap every smidgen of warmth. The mattress creaks in protest when you sit down. It always does that. Every night. It's like the thing has opinions. The hearth crackles a few feet away, trying its best to warm the room, but let's be real, it's more for lighting and mood than actual function. The stone sucks up most of the heat before it reaches you. There's more smoke than flame, and your eyes sting faintly from it. Still, it's better than nothing. The fire's been lit since before supper, and the servants, 3 of them tonight, have already scurried around laying furs, setting your bed layers just right, and warming the bricks they'll place between the sheets later. Now you're alone, mostly. A single maid stands quietly near the door, hands folded, waiting in case you need anything else. She'll sleep on a mat by the threshold, the medieval equivalent of a nightlight and security system, but she knows not to speak unless you do. Silence is part of the ritual now. As you approach the bed, you shiver. Not dramatically, you're too well trained for that, but it's real. Your breath puffs in the air. You touch the bed curtains, thick velvet lined with fur trim. They smell faintly of lavender, likely from the sachets hidden within the folds. Someone's effort to make the place seem more princess and less cold crypt. The stone underfoot feels like walking on a glacier, but you're used to it. This is your home, your fortress, your oversized freezer with banners. And tonight, it's one of the coldest nights of the year. The kind of night when the river outside freezes solid enough for soldiers to cross on horseback. The kind of night when even the wine turns sluggish in its goblet. Here's a little historical gem. In some medieval regions, it got so cold that wine barrels would crack open from freezing, and people stored firewood inside their bedrooms just to save steps at midnight. And yet, kings and queens still insisted on those massive echoing halls. Heating be damned, it was all about appearances. Anyway, back to you, princess. You start peeling off your outer gown, slowly, trying not to touch the skin beneath with cold fingers. Underneath, you've got layers, linen chemise, a tight woolen underdress, a bodice. It's not sexy, it's survival gear. Everything stays on until the last possible second. Your nightwear, another chemise, soft and worn from years of laundering, slightly scratchy but better than freezing. You sit on the bed's edge, draw the sheets back slowly. The mattress smells faintly of herbs, probably mint and mugwort tucked in by your nursemaid, who swears it keeps away bad dreams and creeping illness. And fleas. Always the fleas. You slip your legs beneath the topmost cover a fur throw and feel immediate resistance. The cold lives here, nestled into every seam. It takes time to fight back. You press your back against the pillows, thick lumps of feather bound in linen, and draw the heavy bedding up to your chin. You wait. A few minutes later, the door creaks quietly open. Your maid enters with 2 bricks wrapped in flannel, still warm from the hearth. She kneels at the edge of your bed, lifts the covers, and tucks one by your feet and one at your side. They radiate a comforting warmth, temporary, but blessedly real. She backs away without a word, closes the door behind her. You're finally alone. It's just you, the flicker of firelight, and the quiet hum of an old castle settling in for the night. A soft groan from the wood above, the far-off echo of a shutter slamming. Somewhere a dog barks once, then nothing. This is it. The ritual is complete. Sleep is calling, cold fingers and all. Your bed now feels like a fortress, one made of linen and wool and sheer stubbornness. Every layer matters. Beneath you is the mattress, stuffed with straw and down, flattened into submission by years of royal pressure. On top of it is a bottom sheet, linen, rougher than you'd like but clean enough. Then comes a feather bed, thinner than it sounds, meant to soften the straw's crunch. Above that, an absurd parade of covers, 2 wool blankets, a fur throw, a quilt embroidered with your family crest, another wool blanket, darker this time, and a final pelt that once belonged to a bear that definitely didn't die of old age. You lie still for a moment, not just to savour the warmth, but because shifting is complicated now. Every adjustment risks letting in a gasp of cold air or sliding the precious heat bricks away from your body. You can already feel the difference between your toes and your knees. The warmth creeps slowly like syrup. Moving means sacrificing progress, and under all these layers you are, believe it or not, dressed. This isn't the age of sleeping nude in silk sheets with scented pillows. No, tonight you wear your linen night chemise, thick woolen socks, and a hooded cap that ties beneath your chin. It's deeply unflattering, but it keeps your ears from freezing off. Royal or not, no one wants to wake up with their hair frozen to the pillow. Let's talk layers for a second. You've worn dresses all day, heavy with embroidery and pearl-threaded hems. They dragged across icy flagstones, sucked up moisture like bread in soup, and weighed nearly as much as your horse's saddle. So bedtime is supposed to be a relief, only instead of freeing your body, you're just rearranging it into new shapes beneath new fabrics. It's like nesting dolls made of wool. Your maid, before disappearing for the night, offered you another flannel wrap, like a medieval shawl. You accepted, of course. You always do. It's folded across your chest now, hands tucked beneath it, palms searching for lingering heat from the brick. You can still feel where it was pressed just moments ago. Warmth is never permanent in this room. It's something you have to chase, steal, hoard. One historical tidbit: undergarments were taken extremely seriously. Linen was the go-to material, prized not just for its softness, but for how well it could be boiled. Boiling, in a time without washing machines, was the medieval equivalent of a reset button. Your shifts and nightwear get that hot wash weekly. Well, unless water is frozen, or the laundry servant is sick, or there's a siege. But tonight, thankfully, it smells like soap and mint and lavender sachets, so somebody got it done. There's an odd sort of ceremony to how you settle in. You draw the covers to your chin, you gently hook one foot around the other, trapping heat. You tuck your elbows in and curl just slightly to the left, because the right side lets in a draft from the window slit. You've learned this over time, memorised the currents of your own room, the wind patterns, the sounds of distant torches being extinguished, the moment when the hall below finally goes quiet. Tonight, your thoughts drift to the underlayers. What's beneath what you're wearing? A secret, and very cold hierarchy of protection. Some noblewomen used to stitch flannel linings inside their chemises, hidden from view but glorious in battle against the chill. Others, wealthier or sneakier, wore double shifts. A second layer of linen snug against the skin, sometimes scented or laced with herbs. Not because they believed it would help them sleep better. No, they believed it kept out disease, kept the bad humours from slipping in through the skin. And then there are the rumours, those whispered stories that old nursemaids tell you when you're small, about princesses who slept with hot onions pressed to their feet to draw out fevers, about lords who tucked hedgehogs beneath their beds to keep fleas away. about a duchess who lined her undergown with rabbit pelts so soft she refused to get up until noon. You laugh under your breath at the memory, then cough once as the smoke from the hearth shifts. It's always like this, one breath fine, the next biting. Your bed is against the far wall, which means the warmth reaches you in waves, mostly mild. It would be nice to move the bed closer to the hearth, but that would violate the symmetry of the room. And symmetry, for reasons unclear to anyone except your steward, is sacred. There's another reason you're not closer to the fire: sparks. A rogue ember once landed on the edge of your bed curtain during a particularly windy night. It scorched a crescent-shaped hole right through the embroidery. You still remember the smell. Since then, the bed stays put. Fashioned from thick oak and iron nails, it's been in your family for generations. It groans every time you move, and one post leans slightly to the left, but no one dares replace it. It's tradition. As you begin to drift, you hear the muffled sound of hooves outside. Probably a messenger arriving late, or the night watch making rounds. Either way, they won't disturb you. Your chambers are high up and out of reach, another symbol of your status, and another reason they're so miserably cold. Heat rises, yes, but not fast enough to fill the narrow spiral staircase or warm the hallway leading to your room. The ceiling above you is vaulted, open like a bell, trapping the warm air several feet too high to help. Still, you find your rhythm. You feel the layers pressing down, not unkindly, like the weight of something ancient, something solid, something earned. You don't sleep light, but you don't sleep deep either. You're always listening, for footsteps, for creaking wood, for a scream in the dark. It's not just the cold that keeps you on edge, it's the castle itself, always shifting and whispering like it's alive. One debate scholars still toss around is whether these elaborate sleeping rituals were truly practical or mostly performative. Did the layers actually help? Or were they just the only available option? Could less have been more? No one really knows. But here you are, the sum of every stitch, every fold, every quiet decision made by hands that served you since you were born. You close your eyes. The wind hums through the cracks in the walls, soft and strange, like it's telling you a story from long ago. And in that moment, just before sleep wraps itself around you, you feel, almost, warm. The mattress groans again as you shift your hips slightly to the left, searching for that mythical sweet spot, where the straw beneath the featherbed doesn't poke at your ribs, and the heat from the bricks hasn't faded yet. It's a nightly ritual, this small choreography of inching and curling and adjusting, just enough without disturbing the precious ecosystem you've built under the covers. One wrong move, and a cold draft slithers in like a serpent, and suddenly you're starting all over again. Tonight the bed feels more vocal than usual. Every joint in the wood seems to sigh with age. This thing isn't just a bed, it's a relic. Passed down from princess to princess, noblewoman to noblewoman, the frame darkened by time and polished only by the weight of generations. The headboard is carved with oak leaves and wolves, symbols from your mother's family crest, although a few of the wolves are now just vaguely animal-shaped dents. One of them always looks like it's judging you. You press your hand against the pillow. The linen is cold on top but just barely warm underneath where your cheek was resting moments ago. You flip it anyway. For some reason, even when it's freezing, a fresh side feels comforting. You inhale the scent, lavender again, this time mixed with beeswax and the faintest trace of smoke. Maybe someone added a sprig under the pillow when you weren't looking. Your old nursemaid swore lavender soothed the nerves and kept away dreams of drowning. No one ever explained why that was such a common dream, but it always unsettled you. The frame creaks as you adjust your legs, knee-brushing the tucked-in hot brick, which now feels less like fire and more like a slightly moody cat. Warm, but fading. These bricks, by the way, are a whole operation. Earlier in the evening they were heated directly in the kitchen hearth, pulled out with iron tongs and wrapped carefully in layers of cloth so they wouldn't scorch your sheets, or your skin. They're heavy too. If a servant ever drops one during the handoff, you'll hear it echo like thunder through the stone corridors. But tonight, the bricks made it in silently, a small triumph in the fight against the cold. There's a weird comfort to the way this bed lives and breathes with you. It's not luxurious by modern standards, not even close. There's no fluffiness, no bounce, no softness that welcomes you. But it has personality. It responds, it shifts, It holds grudges if you move too fast. It rewards stillness. Your mattress is filled with a mix of straw and feathers, a compromise between softness and structure. Too many feathers, and you sink like a stone and wake with your back twisted. Too much straw, and it crinkles and crumples under you like an annoyed bird's nest. There are days when you swear you feel a stick jabbing up at you from some long-forgotten summer refill. But that's how beds are made here. By hand, by servants, with whatever materials are available and dry enough. In colder months, the straw is often damp with snowmelt. They try to dry it by the hearth, but it never gets all the way there. Fun fact, in some households, mattresses were filled with dried moss or even seaweed depending on the region. People got creative. When winter settles in and your bones ache with cold, creativity becomes a survival instinct. Your mattress rests on wooden slats, and those rest on the carved bed frame, which squeals like a gossiping maid every time you move. Below the bed, there's a wooden chest, your winter chest, packed with extra bedding, linens, and, weirdly enough, dried herbs and a mouldy leather shoe you've never questioned. Maybe it belonged to a sibling or a servant who had a limp. It's not worth asking now. You're too tired, too comfortable to get curious. Above you, the canopy hangs low and heavy. It's made from deep burgundy velvet, lined with rabbit fur and stitched with the tiny initials of the artisan who made it. E.g., you think. You only noticed that last winter during a particularly long bout of insomnia. That night you stared at the ceiling for hours, memorizing the folds and creases, the way the fabric gathered like a frozen wave. It was both comforting and infuriating, like everything else in this room. Sometimes you imagine what it would be like to sleep on a bed of feathers alone, or one made of cushions so plush they'd swallow you whole. But that's not how things are here. Here you sleep on structure, on history, on mattresses passed down and rebuilt. Your bed isn't comfortable, but it's yours. In a strange way, it's a throne of sorts, where you rule over silence and shadows. The one true indulgence in your sleep routine? The feather bolster. It's a long, sausage-shaped pillow that runs along the width of the bed. You hug it loosely now, arms curled around it like a child holding a stuffed animal. It's stuffed with goose down, which makes it lighter and softer than anything else in your bed. You'd cry if you lost it. No lie. It's the only thing in here that feels like it loves you back. Some scholars still argue about how often bedding was changed in these cold stone fortresses. Weekly, monthly, washed every solstice if the stars aligned. No one really agrees. What is agreed upon is that beds were deeply personal spaces, not just for sleep, but for prayer, for gossip, for quiet deals whispered between silk pillows and veiled curtains, and in your case, for trying not to freeze while plotting imaginary escapes to warmer lands. The night creaks on. You listen. Beneath the mattress you can almost hear the straw settle with your breath. From time to time a sound rises from the lower floors, maybe the snap of a log or a door being pulled shut. Each noise is muffled, made harmless by distance and layers. The castle settles. You settle with it. Outside the wind whistles low and steady. You imagine the stone walls glowing faintly with frost. Maybe snow has started to fall again. You hope so. Snow means quiet. Snow means the world slows down, and so do the expectations. No lessons in the morning, no tedious embroidery by the fire, just sleep, then warm broth and someone brushing your hair while you stare at the flames. You adjust one last time, curling into yourself, the bolster tucked tight. The bed sighs beneath you, and you smile faintly. This creaky, uncomfortable mattress might not be heaven, but it's safe, it's familiar, and on nights like this, that's everything. You don't trust the fireplace, not entirely. It burns now, low, flickering and hissing like it's quietly gossiping about your choices, but you've learned how unreliable it can be. Some nights, it roars too loud and spits embers like it wants a fight. Other nights, like tonight, it wheezes with damp wood and refuses to do anything helpful besides cast moody shadows. The castle's stone chimney was probably last cleaned during your grandmother's lifetime, and the flue is moody at best. Still, you watch it, grateful for the light if not the heat. You try to remember the last time it actually warmed the room on its own. Maybe last spring, when the wood was dry and the wind didn't whip through the slats in the shutters. Maybe never. Even with a roaring blaze, the stone around you seems to drink the warmth greedily and give nothing back. The hearth is ornamental almost, functional in theory, but in practice, Just another medieval inconvenience that comes with the title princess. It's not a small fireplace. It sits beneath a carved mantel, limestone chipped at the corners, with a family crest above it, worn smooth by time and soot. 2 lions and a sunburst, though one of the lions has lost most of its face and now looks vaguely like a sad goat. There's an iron fireback propped behind the logs, meant to reflect heat into the room, though it mostly reflects your flickering silhouette. You can see your shape in it now, distorted and shadowy, bundled under what looks like half the castle's textiles. Let's talk about fuel. Firewood is always a problem. Even in a castle where resources are supposed to flow like wine, the good wood is rationed carefully. Hardwoods like oak and ash are saved for the great hall or your father's chambers. Some symbolic nonsense about strength and heritage. Your fire burns with softer woods, birch, poplar, sometimes even peat bricks if it's been a particularly tight winter. They don't last long, and they leave behind smoke that clings to your clothes and hair in every corner of the chamber. The room always smells faintly burned, not unpleasantly, just continuously, like it remembers every fire ever lit here, centuries of warmth and desperation etched into the air. Tonight's fire is doing its best. It pops every few minutes, releasing tiny sparks that disappear before they hit the stone. You've pulled your bed curtains halfway closed, not fully, not yet, so you can still see the fire from where you lie. It's your nightlight, a stubborn little sentinel in the cold. There's a metal poker leaning by the hearth. You used it once to stir the logs, and the head servant nearly wept. Apparently that's not your job. You're not supposed to touch soot or ash or anything that smells like work. But sometimes, late at night, when you're alone, you break that rule. There's something satisfying about jabbing the logs and watching them split like cracking a code. And even though it earns you a scolding later, you do it anyway. One curious historical fact. Some medieval households believed fire had a personality. They'd talk to it, leave small offerings in the ashes, even blame it for bad dreams or sudden illness. Fire as friend, fire as foe, fire as slightly judgmental roommate. And on nights like this, you get it. You're not just watching flames, you're hoping for a relationship, a little warmth in return for your attention. The flames are low now, mostly orange tongues licking blackened logs, casting dancing shadows on the stone. You can make shapes out of them if you squint, maybe a prancing horse, or a crown, or a knight raising his sword. They shift constantly, never the same twice. It's hypnotic. If your bed weren't so far away, you'd lie on the rug and fall asleep like that. Cheek on fur, fire painting your dreams. But the rug isn't an option. You learned that the hard way as a child, woke up with your face chilled, your fingers stiff, and your nursemaid near tears because you'd nearly frozen your noble self to death. You're wiser now. The bed, though groaning and cold and occasionally possessed, is where you belong. As the fire ebbs, so does your energy. The warmth from the bricks tucked into your sheets is beginning to fade. It always does around now, an hour or so into the night. Your feet still feel mostly warm, but the cold is creeping back in, starting with your calves, moving slow and inevitable like rising tide water. You hear something shift in the corridor. Just one footstep, or maybe the pop of another door closing. You're not afraid exactly. But castles aren't quiet places. Even when everyone's asleep, the place creaks and sighs and whispers. Wood bends, stone settles, wind moans through keyholes and cracks. You've heard it all before, and still, it sometimes catches you off guard. There are stories, always stories, about ghosts, about ancient kings buried beneath the floor, about servants who vanished into secret passageways and were never seen again. You don't believe most of them, but when the fire grows low and the shadows lengthen, your belief becomes negotiable. You pull the covers tighter. The bed curtains drift slightly with the air, moving like slow breath. Everything is alive in here. The fire, the wood, the cold. Even you, wrapped in a dozen layers and lying perfectly still, feel part of some old living system deeper than sleep. It's strange being a princess in winter. Your life is both privileged and fragile. People serve you, flatter you, dress you. But they don't share your cold. They don't lie in a stone room above the kitchens trying to absorb heat from bricks and memories. They don't wonder if tomorrow the firewood will run out or if the chimney will smoke you awake again. There's always debate about how effective these fireplaces really were. Some scholars argue they were more symbolic than functional, meant to show status rather than offer real comfort. After all, a fire in a huge stone room with high ceilings and no insulation is like trying to warm a cathedral with a candle. Others insist they mattered deeply, that proper placement and smart construction could turn a freezing room into a livable space. You don't need the debate, you live it. Every night, you turn your head toward the hearth one last time. The flames are nearly gone now, just red coals pulsing softly. You watch them like a heartbeat, slow and steady, until your eyes begin to close. It's not warmth, not exactly, but it's something. A light, a presence, a comfort. And in this castle, on this freezing night, that's enough. The door opens without a knock, just a careful creak and the subtle whoosh of colder air funneling in behind it. You don't lift your head. You already know who it is. The shuffle of soft shoes, the gentle weight of someone practiced in walking silently across stone, the faint jingle of a belt pouch carrying something heavy and hot. It's one of the servants, the one who always brings the warm bricks from the kitchen hearth when the night grows colder than expected. She's late tonight, which likely means the fire downstairs burned too low, or the bricks had to be reheated twice. That happened last winter during the deep freeze, the week when even the chamber pots turned to slush before morning. She doesn't speak. She knows better than to interrupt whatever quiet state you've folded yourself into. Instead, she approaches the bed with the reverence of someone placing an offering at a shrine. You hear the whisper of fabric as she kneels, lifts the edge of your heavy bed covers, and slips in the new brick. The heat sears your skin instantly, even through wool socks and 2 layers of linen. It's almost too hot, but you don't flinch. You welcome it. Like a lightning bolt of comfort straight to your frozen toes. The second brick goes higher, near your side, slipped between quilt and shift. Her hands are fast but practiced, and you know she's done this 100 times for you. Maybe more. You're not sure of her name. You should know it. But in the web of royal routines, personal connections get filed away under later. Still, you recognize the tilt of her shoulders, the way she tucks in the covers after adjusting the bricks. Like a mother might if mothers here did such things. And then she leaves. No words. Just a brief glance, checking perhaps if your eyes are open, and the sound of the latch clicking shut. The silence returns instantly, fuller somehow, as if her presence had been pressing against it. Warm bricks are no small luxury. Not every chamber gets them, only those of high status, and only if the kitchen fire is still strong enough after dinner. The bricks are thick, cut from fired clay, and left to heat for hours. They're wrapped in layers of wool or flannel, once just rags, but now stitched neatly by hand, sometimes with little charms or symbols sewn into the cloth to hold in the warmth. Your current set has a faded sun embroidered at one corner. You've always liked that, even if you never asked for it. It's strange to think how much of your comfort relies on someone else's unseen labour. Someone has to tend the fire, keep it from smoking out. Someone has to carry the bricks in thick gloves, test the temperature, wrap them up like babies. Then another someone has to climb the drafty stairs, find your chamber in the dark and slip in silently without ever being seen. It's an invisible ballet every night. Also, you can fall asleep without your feet turning blue. But here's the catch. Warm bricks are temporary. You already feel the first one cooling, the edge of its heat fraying at the corners. It's the kind of comfort that dares you to notice its ending. You try to lie still and soak it in while it lasts, curling your toes around it like a miser guarding coins. Because soon enough the cold will come back. It always does. Some castles experimented with heated floors, believe it or not, hollow channels beneath the stone through which smoke or warm air would pass. But those were rare, expensive, and mostly reserved for bathhouses or the private solas of kings. Here in your tower room, the floor stays ice-kissed year-round, and slippers are more essential than crowns. You pull the covers tighter again. There's a rhythm now, a back and forth between the cold sneaking in and the warmth you're stealing back. It's a game of inches. You shift your thigh closer to the new brick. The warmth kisses your skin through layers of linen and you sigh. Not loudly, just enough to fog the air before you. These bricks have become your companions in winter, better than court ladies with their endless chatter about embroidery threads and betrothal rumours, better than the visiting lords who smell like wet dog and speak only in compliments they practised on the ride here. These bricks are honest. They do exactly what they promise, no more, no less. One quirky tidbit. Some families used to scent their bricks before sending them to the bedrooms. A spritz of rose water or crushed herbs pressed into the wrapping cloth. Lavender and rosemary were popular, meant to calm the mind and ward off illness. You're fairly certain one of yours tonight smells like thyme, or maybe something more citrusy. You'll ask the servants tomorrow, though they'll probably just nod and smile and give no real answer. Some secrets are meant to stay folded between the layers. You shift again, adjusting your hip and tucking your fingers beneath the edge of the bolster pillow. Your bed creaks, of course, announcing the motion like an old man complaining about his joints. Somewhere beneath the mattress, the straw crackles and rearranges itself like it's trying to get comfortable too. You wonder briefly how often it's replaced, and then decide you don't want to know. As you nestle deeper, eyes drifting closed again, you think about how people in warmer lands must sleep. With windows open, maybe, and no need for bricks or bed curtains or thermal games of chess. Just sheets, maybe linen ones as light as air, and soft pillows that don't smell faintly of damp sheep. It's a fantasy, sure, but it's a good one. And when you finally do fall asleep, it's to the sound of the fire dying and the feeling of bricks cooling slowly like stars winking out one by one. There's a scholarly debate you once overheard your tutor grumbling about. Were heated bricks more symbolic than practical? Some claim they were just gestures of wealth, status markers tucked into beds that didn't actually need them. But you know better. You've lived these nights, curled up like a scroll, toes aching from frost, praying for a flicker of warmth. You'd trade 3 jeweled combs and a silver brooch for one more brick right now, and yet you're grateful. Even as the cold begins its return march across your blankets, even as the warmth beneath your knees starts to surrender. Tonight, someone cared enough to bring you heat in the dark, and for a princess in a stone tower, that's everything. Your fingers trail along the tapestry to your left, a familiar habit when the cold feels unbearable and your mind needs distraction. It's massive, nearly the full height of the wall and woven with a scene of a hunting party. Hounds chasing deer, noblemen frozen mid-gallop, falcons poised above the trees. You've seen it since childhood, long before you had your own chambers. It's one of those strange, immovable things in life. Always there, always a little faded, always holding on to a world that no longer exists. But it's not just for show. The tapestries are survival gear. Thick wool, lined in flannel, stitched by unseen hands and hammered to the stone with fat iron nails. You can feel the warmth, or rather the lack of cold, when you rest your back against it. It's a buffer, between you and the wind, between you and winter. It doesn't block every draft, but it makes the difference between I'm freezing and I can sleep now, probably without dying. These hangings are everywhere in the castle, lining corridors, dressing up stairwells, cloaking bedrooms. Some are beautiful, with gold thread and delicate flowers. Others are more practical, just thick wool dyed in deep reds and blues, designed to keep rooms from turning into tombs by dawn. Yours are somewhere in between, designed to impress visiting nobles without wasting so much money that the stewards start grumbling. There's one just beside your bed, close enough that you can reach out and press your fingers to it, whenever the room feels particularly cruel. And you do, often. It's the same spot too, a part where the stitching bulges just slightly, like a secret hidden in the fabric. You've never looked behind it. Part of you believes if you did, the cold would pour out like smoke. Some things are best left untouched. In the old days, before glass windows became common, castles used wooden shutters, and even then wind would claw through every seam in the stonework. Tapestries weren't a luxury, they were necessity. Some families didn't bother with decoration at all, just nailed up sacks of wool or animal pelts like makeshift insulation. You've heard of one baron who hung entire bear skins along his hall, heads and claws still attached. You imagine walking past those at night, eyes closed, fur bristling, teeth always smiling. Even in a royal chamber the cold finds you. The walls are thick, nearly 2 arm lengths wide, but stone is greedy. It hoards the chill and radiates it back at you in waves. The tapestries help, yes, but only if you stay still, stay quiet, stay small under your mountain of quilts. On windier nights, like tonight, you can feel the edges of the cold trying to slip behind the hangings, like fingers under a door. You remember one winter when a guest, a lady from the south, delicate and fluttery, came to visit and refused to sleep in her own chamber because the walls were alive with frost. She ended up curled on the floor of your mother's solar for 3 nights straight, claiming the hallway ghosts were warmer than her bed. The servants still tell the story, laughing into their sleeves. You press your ear gently to the tapestry, not expecting to hear anything, but you do. A dull thrum, the wind pressing itself against the outer wall like a cat pawing at a closed door. It shifts in tone now and then, a soft whistle one moment, then a low moan the next. If you didn't know better, you'd say it was singing. People talk about the moaning of the castle as though it's some myth, but it's real. The old stone breathes and shifts, especially in deep winter. At night, it creaks like a ship on black water. Sometimes it shudders as if remembering something. You've heard it all your life, and still, some nights it catches you off guard. A crack from the ceiling beam, a sigh from the floor. The entire building feels animate, like it notices when you're awake. It's said that in some noble households children were told the tapestries were magical, woven not only to warm the walls, but to trap bad dreams. They were meant to catch the cold, yes, but also the whispers, the ghosts, the old griefs of those who slept before. If you touched the wrong corner, it was said, you might hear the last breath of someone long buried beneath the floorboards. You've touched every corner of yours. Nothing happened, at least not yet. You slide back down beneath the covers. The brick at your feet is fading fast now, its core still warm but its edges cool. Your nightgown bunches slightly at the hip, and you adjust it in tiny slow movements so the cold air doesn't sneak in. Your hands tuck beneath the bolster again, and your cheek returns to the same patch of pillow it always finds. The tapestry sways slightly on the wall beside you, just enough to catch your eye, just enough to make you wonder again. How many winters has it seen? How many princesses, noblewomen, lonely guests, and dying old men have leaned their heads against that same embroidered stag, or traced the fraying thread of a fading flower? Some scholars argue about the dual purpose of tapestries. Were they primarily functional, or were they displays of wealth and taste? Were they meant to awe, or merely to keep the teeth from chattering? The answer, as always, is both. That's the great irony of castle life. The most beautiful things are often there to keep the cold out. Even your bed, with its carved frame and brocade canopy, exists because someone, somewhere, got tired of waking up blue-lipped. Outside, the wind picks up. You can hear it in the eaves now, pushing against the corners of your room, looking for a way in. But the tapestry holds, the stone holds, you hold. And with the last heat of the brick fading slowly through your feet, you finally begin to feel something like sleep pressing down on you. Not comfort exactly, but stillness. Wrapped in wool and stories, surrounded by the quiet strength of woven walls, you drift. You finally pull the bed curtains shut. Not all the way, just enough to slip your arm out, reach for the thick velvet edge, and draw it toward you with a practiced flick of the wrist. The rings above creak faintly as they glide along the canopy rod, metal against metal, old but still obedient. One side closes first, and then the other. With a little tug, you tuck the ends together so no sliver of air can sneak through. That's it. The final act in your nightly ritual. Your world has now officially shrunk to the size of your bed. Instantly, everything changes. The air becomes stiller. Warmer, if you can even call it that. It's not that the temperature rises, it's that the cold stops moving. It can't sneak around your ankles or swirl over your cheeks anymore. It's just you, under layers of wool, beneath a curtained dome of faded embroidery and pressed silence. The rest of the room might as well not exist. The fire is gone. The wind, muffled. The world, reduced. These heavy bed curtains aren't just decor, they are life-saving architecture. Thick velvet on the outside, lined with coarse wool inside. Deep burgundy, trimmed with gold tassels that now swing gently from your earlier movement. You've always thought they looked a little absurd, like something that belonged in a parade. But on nights like this, when even your breath feels cold in your throat, you understand them. There's a reason medieval beds had 4 posts. A simple frame wasn't enough when the air inside your own room could sting, so they built little tents, essentially. Canopies with drawstrings and curtains that transformed beds into private chambers within chambers. Miniature castles within the castle, a place where you could trap what little heat you could generate and pray it stayed long enough for sleep. And it works, to a degree. Within minutes the space begins to shift. Your body heat, hoarded beneath 6 layers of bedding, and now sealed in by the curtain walls, starts to fight back against the deep cold. It's still chilly, yes. Your fingers are stiff, your nose like ice, but your core feels survivable. You let your head sink deeper into the pillows. There are two beneath you now, both feather-filled, though one has gone flat on one side. You flip it, feel the cooler side briefly against your cheek, and sigh into the fabric. Even the slight scent of beeswax and charcoal clinging to the cloth feels familiar, grounding. This bed may not be soft by modern standards, but it's your sanctuary. You've had this canopy bed since you turned 13. Your transition from the nursery suite to a proper princess's chamber. The gift, they said, was a sign of your growing importance. But you suspected it was just because no one else wanted to sleep in this room so close to the turret's edge, with its moaning wind and drafty floor. Still, the bed was a marvel. Carved posts with twisted vines, an embroidered canopy stitched with scenes from a family legend, and those glorious thick curtains. You pretended you didn't care. But that first night, when the fire sputtered and the walls groaned, you clutched the curtain shut and felt, for the first time, a little powerful. A princess in a fortress of velvet. One odd historical detail you'd never have imagined. The curtains weren't just for warmth or privacy. In some households they also served as protection from vermin. Rats, spiders, even birds that had found their way into the rafters. Bed curtains kept them out. You're not sure if that's ever happened here, but you do remember one terrifying morning last winter when you awoke to the soft thud of something falling outside the bed. It turned out to be a bat. You've never drawn the curtains late again. You adjust your position again, slowly, gently, so the bricks don't shift too much. The one at your feet is now more memory than heat. You press your toes against it anyway, holding on to the last of its warmth like a secret. The quilt has slipped slightly from your shoulder and you pull it up, taking care not to disturb the layer of fur just above it. It's the softest of them all, rabbit or fox, you think, maybe both. Lined in faded satin, a bit worn at the corners but still your favourite. Inside this curtained cocoon, time slows. You can't hear much. The walls of fabric drink sound. Distant noises become distant dreams. A door closing, maybe. The creak of a beam above. The low murmur of someone's footsteps in the corridor beyond. Nothing reaches you clearly. It's like floating in warm, muffled water, or being buried under snow, safe and still. Some say this is how royalty learned to sleep light. With so many dangers outside the curtain, fire, illness, betrayal, rats, you trained yourself to drift without falling too deep. To keep one ear open, even as the rest of you surrendered. Sleep is a risk, but it's a necessary one. There are stories of kings stabbed in their beds, of queens smothered beneath silk sheets. That's why your maid insists on checking the bed each evening before you climb in, lifting the mattress, flipping the pillows, tapping the underside of the frame to startle out anything hiding. You used to laugh at it. Now you're not so sure. You lie on your side now, one hand tucked beneath your cheek, the other resting just above your waist. There's a cool spot between the fur and the quilt that you can't seem to fix. But you let it be. Some things, even in a fortress of blankets, can't be conquered. There's a curious debate among modern scholars. Were these curtain beds truly effective in keeping warm, or was it just another case of medieval optimism? Some argue that without insulation, even a curtained bed couldn't hold heat for long. Others say it made all the difference. You don't need a study. You live the answer nightly. When the curtains are open, the room bites. When they're shut, the air stops moving, the cold hesitates, and sleep becomes something almost reachable. And tonight, like every night, you lie here in your little wool-walled kingdom, listening to the breath of the bed and the faintest rustle of your own heartbeat in your ears. The dark presses in, but it doesn't feel unfriendly. Just old, just heavy, just waiting. Wrapped in curtain and cloth, under canopy and sky, you finally start to let go. You can barely move now, not that you want to. The bed has become a layered fortress, a battleground of textiles, and you, somewhere in the middle, are the buried prize. Each layer has its own weight and warmth, and you've learned not to fight them. The first time you slept under this many covers, you nearly panicked, convinced you were suffocating under a royal avalanche. But that was years ago. Now you understand. The weight is your ally. It presses the cold out. It holds the warmth in, and it tells your muscles, gently but firmly, that it's time to stop fighting the day. Let's take stock, shall we? Closest to your skin is your shift. Linen, breathable, with a few stitches mended clumsily near the hem from when you stepped on it half asleep last week. Over that, a night robe of brushed wool, loose and scratchy in a way that's oddly comforting. The bedding begins with your bottom sheet, also linen, also mended and cool to the touch, even after an hour under your body. Then comes the first wool blanket, plain and tightly woven, the sort that could double as a sail in a storm. Above that, a feather-stuffed quilt with its seams beginning to bulge, each square like a tiny pillow sewn into a patchwork cloud. Then another woolen layer, this one striped, dyed with woad and madder. Above that, a fur throw made from stitched-together pelts, possibly squirrel, possibly something nobler, and on top of it all, a final covering, heavy, decorative, and so stiff with embroidery it might as well be armour. You couldn't sit up right now even if you tried. The effort it would take to shift all this weight off your chest would be enough to fully wake you, and no one wants that. Your only movement is slight. A toe brushing the remnants of warmth from the brick, a hand adjusting the sleeve that's twisted at your wrist, the barest roll of your head against the pillow to find a slightly cooler patch. It's strange, really. You've spent the day being dressed, unwrapped, redressed, laced, pinned, buttoned, layered like a cake, and paraded through cold corridors and colder courtyards. But only now, pinned like a butterfly beneath these covers, do you feel anything close to peace. The layers are suffocating, yes, but they are also silent. They don't demand anything from you. They don't gossip. They don't ask when the wedding is. They don't measure your posture or your grammar. They just exist, like snow on a rooftop, like time. One historical gem that's often overlooked. Bedding was one of the most valuable possessions in a noble household. It was so precious, in fact, that it was often listed in wills, passed down as part of a dowry, or locked away during disputes. Feathers were currency, furs were family heirlooms, quilts bore lineage, stitched with sigils or woven with colours specific to a house's heraldry. And the idea that you'd own your own full set as a young unmarried woman? Unthinkable. Yet here you are, wrapped in the spoils of your lineage like a very cosy war trophy. Even the individual blankets have history. The red and gold wool was a gift from your great-aunt, who claimed it once belonged to a prince from the west. The fur throw came from a hunter's fair, bartered in secret by your father for reasons no one will explain. The topmost quilt, the stiff, embroidered one, was made by your mother and two ladies-in-waiting during one long gossip-fueled winter. You know every thread, every flower, every oddly shaped lion stitched into the borders. Somewhere out there, people think princesses sleep on clouds, that their beds are filled with swan down, that their pillows smell of roses, and that a retinue of harpists serenade them into dreams. You would like to invite those people into your chamber for just one January night. Let them feel the crush of wool. Let them breathe the air that tastes faintly of stone and smoke and old furs. Let them wrestle the top quilt down far enough to move their arms. Then ask them again about the cloud bed myth. There's an art to sleeping in layers like this. Too much movement and the covers shift, exposing cold air in fatal little slits. Too little movement, and your limbs go stiff. The trick is subtlety, micro-movements, the twitch of a knee, the curling of fingers into fists, then open again. You become your own hearth, generating warmth one breath at a time. The bed holds your shape now. You've sunk into it slightly, the feathers remembering your spine, the straw below adjusting with quiet pops. Your right shoulder is a little lower than your left, a natural tilt from years of sleeping in this precise spot. There's a slight hollow in the mattress where your hips settle, a familiar dip that would feel wrong anywhere else. Curiously, there's scholarly disagreement about how effective these beds truly were. Were the layers a necessity born of brutal winters, or were they a performance of wealth, a demonstration of status through absurd quantities of fabric? Some suggest a mix of both. Others claim that much of the warmth came not from the layers themselves, but from the ritual of bedtime, that the process, dressing down, layering up, sealing in the heat, was part of a larger psychological game. You don't care. You're not interested in the theories of men who never had to sleep in a turret room during a northern frost. You turn your head again. This time your ear presses against the bolster, and the world quiets further. You can hear your heartbeat, slow, dull, steady. You listen to it as you might a lullaby. Your eyelids feel heavy, not just from sleep, but from the weight of all things. The day, the history stitched into your blankets, the pressure of the cold just outside the curtain's reach. The truth is, this isn't comfort in the way most people imagine it. It's not soft and gentle. It's not plush. It's not indulgent. It's defiant. It's survival layered with symbolism. You're sleeping in the heart of a castle designed more for siege than serenity, under bedding made more for insulation than intimacy, and yet, somehow, you're finding peace. Not because the conditions are perfect, but because the bed belongs to you. Because these layers are yours, and even as your breath fogs slightly in the small airspace between you and the curtain, even as your nose feels cold and your hands stay tucked into your sleeves for warmth, you begin to drift. Not because the bed is perfect, but because the world beyond it no longer matters. Tonight's nightgown is the soft one, the one you always reach for when the frost turns the windows to lace, and your bones feel like they've shrunk a little deeper into themselves. It's thick linen, worn thin at the elbows, but still warmer than anything newer. Someone tried to stitch a daisy into the hem once. Maybe a younger version of you, or a bored maid looking for a moment of beauty in the folds. It's crooked, half-finished, but you've never unpicked it. It feels like a secret memory hiding in thread. You slide your fingers over the daisy now, absently, as your legs curl up and your body shifts into the familiar shape of sleep, but ready to wake at any sound. Nightgowns, like everything in your world, are never simple. There's a rotation depending on the season, your mood, and which part of the castle you're sleeping in. Some are light and thin, suitable only for springtime nights and heavy quilts. Others, like this one, are almost structured, lined in flannel, high-necked, long-sleeved, and tight at the wrists with a bit of braided cord. You've known ladies who slept in fur-lined robes and velvet-trimmed shifts, and once, a visitor from the court who claimed her nightgown was lined with ermine. You didn't believe her then, and you still don't. No one sacrifices ermine for bedtime. What matters more than fashion really is practicality. You've seen what happens when someone forgets that. A cousin from the southern coast once insisted on sleeping bare-armed in silk, like the Greeks did, and she spent the next 3 weeks coughing up something that sounded like a curse. After that, no one questioned the wisdom of layered sleep again. You draw your knees closer to your chest beneath the mountain of covers, and the nightgown shifts with you, sliding against your skin, clinging slightly where your body is warmest. The neckline brushes your chin, a little scratchy, a little comforting. Your wrists stay tucked beneath the blankets. The cords around them are tight enough to keep the cold out, but loose enough not to cut off your circulation, which, yes, was an actual concern last winter when someone tied them a bit too eagerly, and you lost feeling in your fingers until breakfast. There are 5 nightgowns in total in your collection. 6, if you count the truly awful one your aunt gifted you. A pale yellow thing that smells perpetually like bitter herbs and never seems to dry properly after washing. You don't count that one. The soft one you're wearing now is technically your second best, but it's the one you trust most. The real best, the one lined with wool and silk ribbon trim, is reserved for special nights. Midwinter feast, your name day, nights after long journeys or political conversations that leave you aching from the inside out. Tonight, though, isn't about status. It's about surviving the coldest stretch of the year, when the wind feels like it's speaking in its own cruel language, and the castle seems to shift into something older and less friendly after sundown. This is the nightgown you choose for that, the one that smells like old soap and lavender tucked deep into the sleeves, the one whose seams have been restitched more times than you can count. A fun little historical side note: some nightgowns were passed down through families like wedding gowns. Yes, seriously. If the fabric held together, and sometimes even if it didn't, it would be kept, mended, and repurposed. Sleeves shortened, hems lengthened, embroidered panels turned into new ones. There are stories of noblewomen being buried in their nightwear, not because it was symbolic, but because it was the warmest garment they owned. A strange sort of final comfort. You've wondered sometimes what happens to these garments when they outlive their usefulness. Do they become rags for washing? Do they get sold off in secret, stripped of their embroidery and passed to merchant wives in the village? You hope not. You'd rather believe they're burned with ceremony, their warmth offered back to the fire that once kept them alive. The one you're wearing now used to belong to your mother. You found that out by accident, one evening when the maid folded it with the sleeves tucked in just the way she used to do. You didn't ask questions, just pulled it over your head, climbed into bed, and tried not to feel everything all at once. Tonight, it does its job. The fabric traps your body heat, keeps your skin from touching the icy sheets directly. You lie there, still curled, like a fossil waiting to be unearthed. A little pocket of warmth buried in wool and history. You think about how much attention is paid to what you wear in the day, how many hands it takes to get you into a gown, how many pins hold it in place, how much time is wasted lacing and unlacing things. And yet here, in the dark, none of that matters. This nightgown, plain, repaired, unfashionable, is more useful to you than all the brocade in the kingdom, and no one sees it. No one applauds it, but it's yours. There's a scholarly debate you overheard once about whether medieval people really had specific sleepwear, or if they simply wore undergarments to bed. Some say nightgowns were a luxury, a vanity. Others insist they were essential, especially for the upper class, as much about comfort as about modesty. You suspect it's both. Practicality wrapped in tradition. A symbol, sure, but also a shield. You breathe deeply now, inhaling the quiet scent of old linen and clean skin. Your arms are tucked tight to your sides. Your toes brush one another, trying to find equilibrium in the cooling layers. There's something deeply soothing about this stillness, this containment. You're not floating or sprawling. You're packed, sealed, protected. The wind rattles somewhere in the distance, maybe the shutters, maybe a hallway window, and you flinch without moving. But then it stops. You remind yourself. The nightgown is warm. The bricks were warm. The bed is closed. You are safe, for now. And with the weight of blankets pressing you down and the familiar embrace of old linen against your skin, sleep begins to find you. Not quickly, not fully, but slowly. Like snow drifting into a corner. Quiet, slow, certain. Your fingers brush the edge of the wooden tray resting on the bedside stool. A small, dark surface now half hidden by the folds of your curtain. It was placed there before sunset, when the world was still golden and your chamber smelled of bread crust and spiced broth. There's always a tray, always the same few things. A clay cup, still faintly warm from the fire it sat beside. A cloth-wrapped parcel that contains a bit of bread or a honeyed oatcake if the kitchens were generous. And tonight the indulgence of indulgences, a tiny flask of mulled wine sealed with wax. It wobbles slightly when you nudge it, and the sound, liquid shifting gently against earthenware, is strangely comforting in this thick quiet. There's an art to a midnight snack when you're royalty. You can't just grab something and chew like a peasant in a hayloft. No, there are unspoken rules, codes of refinement even at your sleepiest. But inside this velvet-curtained bed cave, curled under layers and wrapped in linen, those rules loosen a little. You're allowed small rebellions, biting directly into the oatcake, drinking from the cup with both hands, like a child, letting crumbs fall onto the sheet and not immediately brushing them off. Small sins, satisfying ones. You unwrap the cake with slow fingers. The cloth is soft, reused 100 times, probably stitched from an old underdress. It smells faintly of cloves. The oatcake is dense and just sweet enough, the kind that fills your mouth and throat with warmth. It crumbles as you bite into it, and you chew slowly, not bothering to chase every flake. It's not about hunger, it's about ritual. This is part of the process now. Fuel for the night ahead. Something to tell your stomach that you're safe, that warmth still exists, even if only in sugar and spice. The mulled wine is the real star. You break the wax seal with your thumb and feel the familiar tug of the cork. When it gives way, a small cloud of scent escapes. Cloves, cinnamon, a whisper of orange peel. The wine is lukewarm now, but not cold, and as it slides over your tongue, you feel it bloom through your chest like fire. It's thick, too sweet for some, but perfect for the deep stillness of midnight. It coats your throat. It lingers. It quiets things inside you that have been rattling since sunset. You don't drink much, just a few sips. Enough to dull the edge of cold in your belly, enough to settle the restlessness that sometimes creeps in when the fire goes out and the shadows start whispering. You cap the flask, hide it again in the folds of cloth, and place the tray back on the stool with a quiet clink. Not every castle has such comforts. Mulled wine, especially, is a luxury, a winter remedy brewed from sour wine made bearable by spices that have travelled farther than you'll likely ever go. Cinnamon from the east, clove from the islands, nutmeg so expensive it could buy a bolt of velvet. Every time you drink this, you're drinking trade routes and political marriages and tiny wars fought over flavour. You think about that sometimes. How your bedtime drink was once guarded by swords and treaties, and now it's here, warming your stomach in the dark. Even the oatcake has meaning. A recipe passed from cook to cook, grain ground in a mill by someone you'll never meet. Honey pulled from hives kept in the outer garden wall. You imagine the bees, trembling in their own winter sleep, and you thank them silently as the sweetness fades from your tongue. There's a long-standing scholarly debate, because of course there is, about whether such nighttime snacks were normal or indulgent. Some argue it was necessary. A warm belly keeps the body from shivering itself awake. Others claim it was more symbolic, a mark of status, a bedtime ritual reserved for the highest ranks. You're not sure which is true, but you know this. You look forward to that little tray more than you look forward to most things. It's a promise that even on the coldest nights you haven't been forgotten. And it's not just about food. Sometimes the tray carries small additions, a sprig of dried mint, a folded prayer written by your tutor, a scrap of fabric scented with rose oil. Once, during a fevered week last winter, the cook sent you a tiny clay bird glazed with honey. It sat on your windowsill until it cracked in the spring sun. You never asked for these things, but someone always adds them. Quiet kindnesses, passed hand to hand, arriving like ghosts at your bedside. You settle back into your covers now, licking the last stickiness from your thumb. The food sits warmly in your belly, anchoring you deeper into the mattress. You rearrange the top blanket slightly to let the heat rise. Your head sinks again into the pillow, your body heavier than before, lazier. Even your thoughts move slower now, like syrup in cold glass. The curtain walls around your bed hold in the scent of the wine, spiced and faintly earthy. Your nightgown smells of dried lavender, and the bedding smells like heat and wool and dust. It's not fragrant in the way the court wants rooms to smell, but it's real. It's home. You breathe it in with purpose, as if smell alone could ground you through winter. The wind has calmed for now. You don't know how long that will last, but you enjoy the stillness while it's here. The fire is probably no more than cinders behind the hearth now, the faintest glow seeping through the curtain slit. That's fine. Your tray is empty, your stomach is full, and your limbs feel like melting wax. You shift once more, repositioning your leg around the remaining warmth of the brick, and close your eyes. You don't expect dreams tonight. You've eaten, you've drunk, you've survived another hour of the cold. Sometimes that's enough. Sometimes sleep comes not like a gift, but like a duty fulfilled. So you let go, one breath at a time, as the oatcake settles in your belly and the taste of clove lingers at the back of your tongue. The last candle died about an hour ago. You didn't see it go, you never do, but you felt it. That sudden shift from flickering gold to full black, from gentle shadows on the bed curtains to a thick velvety dark that feels less like a colour and more like a sensation. Not empty, not blank, more like the room itself exhaled and took you with it. The glow from the hearth is long gone too, reduced to a quiet red memory buried in ash. The castle is asleep now mostly, or pretending to be. The walls don't snore, but they do settle. You hear the occasional sigh of timber, the faint click of a rafter realigning itself, the low whoosh of wind rolling against the stone like a sea trying to get in. In this darkness, there's no sense of shape anymore. You could reach out, but what would you touch? Wool, maybe velvet. The edge of your own breath as it meets the curtain and rolls back. There's nothing to see, nothing to read. You know your fingers are there, curled beneath the bolster pillow. You know the ceiling is above you, unseen, but without the fire or the candle, everything dissolves into one endless stretch of soft, breathing black. This is when the cold becomes clever. Not sharp, not biting, just patient. It starts to move again, not boldly, but like mist. You feel it first around your neck, where the quilt slips slightly during sleep, then around your ankles where the fur layer has shifted. You don't panic. You don't even move quickly. You just make tiny, deliberate adjustments. A pull at the collar of your shift, a nudge of your knee to recapture the folds, a slow exhale to reheat the air beneath the covers. Your nose stays cold, always. There's no saving it. You tried once to wrap a scarf around your face while you slept and woke up sweating and tangled in wool like a stunned sheep. So now, you let it freeze. It's the price you pay to keep the rest of your body still, wrapped, contained. The castle outside your bed continues its silent performance. Somewhere down the hall, a shutter creaks open and slaps back closed. The sound is brief but feels oddly loud in your ears, like a slap to the calm. You wait, just in case it happens again. It doesn't. So you return to listening. There are layers to this silence. The not quite quiet of a place built before the idea of insulation. The groans of beams in wind. The scurry of something small across the floor 2 stories down. A drip, maybe from a crack in the roof, maybe just your imagination, echoing faintly like a ticking clock. You've trained yourself to sleep through most of it, but not all, never all. You've been taught, both by tutors and experience, that a princess should never sleep too deeply. It's undignified, they say, but more than that, it's dangerous. You're not a peasant in a field lulled by exhaustion. You're not a merchant's wife, tucked between a hearth and a snoring husband. You are political currency. You are watched. And so, even in your sleep you listen. There's a rhythm to your breath now, shallow, measured. You start to count. Something you've done since childhood. Not sheep. That's a peasant thing. No, you count candles. The tall ivory ones in the chapel. 1, 2, 3. You imagine them lit, then snuffed. You count backwards. 20, 19, 18. You imagine each flame flickering, fighting, then surrendering to the dark. It's a strange comfort to extinguish things on purpose, in your control, unlike real candles which sputter out while your back is turned. One historical quirk. In many castles, candles were treated like gold, too precious to burn without purpose. Rooms went dark by force, not design. A single taper might be the only light in a chamber of 10 people. You're lucky. Your status means there's a full rack of them set aside just for your use. And yet here you are, wrapped in shadow, because even luxury can't outlast a long night. You don't mind. Too much light keeps you awake. Your nursemaid used to say light draws spirits. Best to sleep in the dark, she said, so they can't see you. It's a chilling thought, but one you accepted years ago. The dark doesn't frighten you anymore. Not really. The cold, yes. The unexpected, yes. But the dark? It's just the other side of the curtain, a familiar companion. It wraps you in the same way the bedding does, pressing in close, but never quite touching. This stillness is where your mind begins to wander. Not far, just a little. You think about tomorrow's lessons, the dull hum of political talk you'll be forced to sit through, the embroidery you'll pretend to enjoy, the food you'll eat slowly, carefully, with your spine straight and your fingers precise. But all of that feels far away now. That world doesn't exist in this moment. Only your breathing, only the weight of the covers, only the memory of mulled wine and the echo of a shutter. And this is the paradox of the castle at night. It's never truly quiet, but it insists on acting like it is. You're surrounded by sound, stone expanding, wind whistling, distant snores, a guard's footstep, but none of it reaches you fully. Your bed, with its curtains closed and its bedding piled like a fort, filters everything down to a hush. You could scream, and no one would hear. You could whisper, and it would sound like a shout in your own ears. You settle deeper. The warmth you built hours ago is still lingering in pockets. The brick is cold now, but not icy. Just a stone among other stones. You shift your foot and find a sliver of retained heat, something left behind by your own skin. You press your toes to it, hold, stay. One final scholarly curiosity. Some nobles believed that the darkness between midnight and the cock's first crow was the dead hour, a window when spirits walked freely, when bad dreams grew sharp teeth, and when waking in fear meant something was wrong. You've woken in that hour before, sat up straight in your bed, heart racing with no memory of why. Not tonight, not yet. Instead, you let yourself hover, not fully asleep, not fully awake, suspended in a thick darkness that holds you like water. Your last thought before drifting is a simple one, but familiar. Let the darkness keep its secrets, and let the morning come slowly. You dream of gardens, of course. You always do when the cold gets this deep and the bed feels more like a cocoon than a place to rest. It starts the same every time. Sunlight so strong it blurs the edges of everything. Grass thick beneath your bare feet. Air warm and slow like honey. You walk through the orchard just beyond the castle wall. Though you know in real life the gate's been locked since Michaelmas and the trees are stripped bare by frost. But here in your mind they blossom again. Pears heavy on branches, bees bumping from flower to flower, and somewhere in the distance someone calling your name with laughter in their voice. The dream is golden. Too golden. You know this is how it goes. That unreal syrupy warmth, the kind you can never seem to find in waking life, especially not in the dead of winter. You're running now, though your feet don't quite touch the ground, and you're wearing that pale green gown you outgrew 3 years ago, the one with sleeves like flower petals. It doesn't matter. Dreams don't care about sizing, or frostbite, or how your ankles ache from standing through 2 hours of court diplomacy earlier that day. In dreams, you are free. But freedom is never uncomplicated. Not for you. The garden changes, the air shifts, the trees turn stranger, taller, thinner. The sky darkens. Not night, just less bright. Like someone pinched the sun's flame. And the voice calling your name, it starts to sound less joyful, more urgent. You don't turn toward it. You never do. Not in this dream. Some scholars say dreams were considered divine messages in medieval times, and everyone, from kings to peasants, kept dream books under their pillows, as if meaning might ooze out like perfume in the dark. Others believed dreams were tricks, planted by demons or restless spirits, especially when the wind was high and sleep came hard. You don't know what you believe. All you know is that your dreams always start with gardens and end with something cold crawling back in. You shift in your sleep, a soft murmur escaping your lips. The bed responds with a groan, a low creak from the post near your feet. Your eyes flutter, but do not open. For a moment the dream falters, like smoke caught in wind. You're aware of the pillow again, of the cool patch your cheek has drifted into, of the sensation of your breath bouncing back from the curtain just inches from your mouth. You curl tighter without fully waking, dragging the fur-lined blanket a fraction higher over your shoulder. The cold has seeped back in, sly and slow, but not sharp enough to break the spell of sleep entirely. The garden returns, changed now. You're not walking, but sitting, beneath an arbour heavy with late roses. Someone is reading aloud. You can't see their face. You never can. They read from a letter, maybe, or a book that doesn't exist. The words are soft and soothing, and none of them make sense. You lean back against a tree trunk that smells of sun and dust, and for a moment, the world feels whole, warm, simple, possible. Then, as always, something breaks the dream. Tonight it's a bell. Faint, distant, and not quite real. A bell tolling once, twice, from the chapel tower down in the courtyard. Not loud enough to wake you fully, but strong enough to stir the surface of your sleep. It might be real. It might not. Sometimes you dream sounds that belong to the castle. Other times the castle echoes things you've only imagined. Still, the sound cuts through your garden. The roses drop their petals. The book closes. The voice stops. The warmth fades. You roll over in your bed, turning your back to the curtain seam where a faint line of frost has begun to form. The bedding shifts with you in sluggish waves, each blanket adjusting a moment after your body moves. You pull the bolster closer, pressing it between your knees now. The fabric is cool on the outside, warm where it's already been touching you. This is how you hold sleep in place, by folding yourself around something solid, something known. A dog barks once somewhere in the lower courtyard. Just one sharp sound. You don't react, not really. It's a guard dog, probably startled by a bird or its own breath. Still, your body registers it, shoulders tensing briefly, then releasing. You've learned to categorize sounds even in your sleep. Harmless. Ignore. Keep dreaming. Somewhere in the back of your mind, the garden still glows faintly. Just an outline now. A memory of a warm place you never actually knew. You let it sit there, just beneath the edge of waking, as you slip back into the soft layers of half-consciousness. It's always strange, this balance. Dreaming while knowing you're dreaming. Half of you is still in the arbour, listening to imaginary words read aloud by someone who doesn't exist. The other half is back in your body, feeling the shift of cold air near your feet, aware of the curtain, the brick, the faint pressure of the bolster beneath your thighs. This is how sleep works in a castle like this. Never full, never lightless, always part performance, part survival. Another historical curiosity. Some physicians of the time believed dreams could predict illness, that a dream of water meant fever, that fire meant infection, that gardens signalled fertility or ambition. If that's true, your subconscious is clearly planning a coup, or hoping for spring. Hard to say. But you don't analyse, not tonight. You just pull the top quilt a little higher with your chin and settle. The wind has picked up again outside, and the curtains tremble faintly in their hooks, like someone tugging gently on the edge of your world. You don't look, you don't open your eyes, you know what's out there. Stone, ice, the emptiness of a castle at rest. Inside your cocoon, it's still, heavy. Not warm exactly, but no longer cruel. You've built this sanctuary with your own stillness, your own breath, your own refusal to let the cold have you entirely. And as the garden fades completely and the dream melts into dark, you go with it, finally fully into sleep. Something wakes you, and it's not gentle. Not one of those dreamy stirs where you blink your way into wakefulness, with a soft sigh and a stretch. Number. This is the kind of wake-up that reminds you your body is still a little animal, cold-nudged, half-panicked, disoriented in the dark. You're not sure what did it. Maybe a noise, maybe a breeze too sharp, too sudden, or maybe your own body, fed up with lying stiff in the same position for hours, decided it had had enough. Either way, you're not asleep anymore. The first thing you feel is the stone under you, or rather the stone beneath the straw mattress, beneath the feather bed, beneath the wool blanket beneath you. It's there, a distant chill rising up like a warning. Your hip aches, pressed too long against one spot. Your shoulder is sore. You shift slightly, wincing at the crackle of straw inside the bed. It's not loud, but in the dark, everything is louder. The bed groans again, a long, familiar protest. You're sure it's been creaking since the plague years. You try not to move too much. You've learned this lesson the hard way. At this hour, every shift in position has consequences. A lifted arm can create a cold pocket. A kicked-off blanket takes hours to recover. But you can't stay as you were. You're trapped between discomfort and danger. Small, creeping dangers. Exposed toes, cold air against the back of your neck, the threat of having to fully wake just to rebuild your warm nest from scratch. So you make small choices. You unhook your knee from where it's caught in the folds and tuck it in tighter. You roll slightly, dragging the quilt with you like a heavy second skin. You pull the fur throw up over your shoulder and with great effort resettle your face into the pillow without losing any heat in the process. And then comes the real horror. The chamber pot. Not immediately, no. You lie still for a minute, hoping, praying, bargaining with your own bladder. Maybe it's a false alarm. Maybe if you lie perfectly still, the feeling will pass. But it doesn't. It never does. You sigh, a quiet, desperate sound, and steel yourself for the worst task of winter nights. The chamber pot waits beneath the bed. Always beneath the bed. It's made of glazed ceramic, thick and unremarkable, with a crack down one side that never quite leaks, but always looks like it might. The maid sets it there each evening, neatly tucked under a stool draped with linen to hide the indignity of its presence. It is the one part of castle life that no one glamorizes, not even the poets. You push the covers back slowly, feeling the temperature change in real time, like stepping from a hot bath into snow. Your arms protest first, then your thighs, then your bare feet as they touch the frigid sheet beneath. You mutter something under your breath, something halfway between a curse and a prayer. Then you sit up. Sitting up in a bed like this is not simple. There are layers to unstick, bricks to avoid, hair to untangle from your pillow. You do it like a ghost rising from the dead, slowly, grumpily, draped in shadow. Once upright, you grope for the edge of the curtain, pull it open an inch or two, and immediately regret it. The cold from the room rushes in like a thief. You flinch, nose stinging, teeth clenching. The castle breathes ice. The floor is worse. You know it will be. You hesitate for a long second, then lower your feet onto the wooden slats beside the bed. They've been walked on by 1,000 feet and 100 winters, and tonight they feel like punishment. You grit your teeth and slide off the mattress entirely, careful not to lose your footing as you squat down, lift the stool's linen skirt, and pull out the chamber pot like it's a creature you hope is asleep. No candle, no light, just memory and habit. You do what needs to be done, quickly, quietly, one hand clutching your nightgown to your chest for warmth. The pot is cold, horribly cold. You hiss without meaning to, the sound swallowed immediately by the thick air. Somewhere outside, the wind groans as if echoing your misery. And yet, this is the kind of moment no one writes down. No tapestry features this part. No song mentions the royal bottom meeting the ceramic lip of a glorified bowl in the middle of a subarctic tower room. But it happens, night after night. Noble or not, nature still rules you. You finish as fast as you can, slide the pot back beneath the stool, and stumble back into bed with the grace of a freezing bear. The sheets are no longer welcoming. They're cold again, especially where you left them open. The bricks have lost most of their warmth. Your pillow is now somehow damp, and you suspect it's from your own breath. Still, you press yourself back into the centre of the bed and begin the long, frustrating work of rewarming yourself. You pull the blankets back over you, first the linen, then the wool, then the quilt, then the fur, then the embroidery. Your hands shake as you do it, but not from fear, just from the sheer slap of the cold. You try not to think about how long it will take to feel warm again. It doesn't help. You focus on breathing, deep, slow inhales into the cavern of air you've built beneath the covers. You nestle your legs around the bolster. You return your face to the pillow and squeeze your eyes shut. One fascinating fact. In some castles, especially in colder regions, servants were paid specifically to prepare beds before sleep. Not just to warm them, but to keep the chamber pot from freezing overnight. In one household, it's said the servant even sat on the pot for a moment to take the chill out of it. You wonder if that's apocryphal. You kind of hope it's not. You're still shivering, but it's not violent. More like a slow, rhythmic twitch, as your body tries to remember what warmth felt like. You whisper something to yourself, words with no meaning, just noise to fill the dark. Then silence again. The wind has changed direction now, whistling from a new angle. You hear it pressing at the shutters, slapping once or twice, then pausing, then slapping again like a bored hand knocking. You don't look. You don't want to see your breath in the air. That would mean it's colder than you thought. Instead, you turn your back to the sound and retreat further beneath your blankets. It takes time, maybe minutes, maybe more. But eventually the warmth begins to return. Not real warmth, not like fire or bricks, but the shallow, hard-earned warmth of your own body heat, finally pooling in the linen. Your toes uncurl, your hands stop twitching, and slowly, sleep circles back to you, like a dog deciding whether it's safe to lie down again. You aren't truly alone in this bed. Not really. And tonight, as the warmth returns by painfully slow degrees, and your limbs begin to unclench from their midnight ordeal, you become aware of the smallest movement, a soft shift of weight near your ankles, followed by the faintest vibration of something breathing. You smile in the dark, nose still half frozen, lips chapped from dry air. He's here again. Curled at the foot of the bed like the world's warmest, grumpiest lump of fur. Your little hound, or more accurately, your heat source with ears. His name changes depending on your mood. Sometimes it's Sir Snore-a-lot, sometimes Buttons, and sometimes just "you absolute miracle," whispered through the dark like a spell. But officially he's Balthazar, a gift from your aunt 2 winters ago when she finally acknowledged that the castle's northern towers were not suited for human habitation, let alone for someone she hoped would survive to a respectable marriage. He came wrapped in wool and smelling faintly of goat. Now he smells like old bread and dust, and you wouldn't trade him for a crown. He doesn't move much. He's smart like that. The dog knows that conserving heat is an art, and he's perfected it to a science. He's burrowed under the fur throw now, curled into a croissant of loyalty at your feet. When you shifted earlier, escaping the bed for the cold horror of the chamber pot, he waited. Patient, blinking, tail twitching once. But now that you're back and still, he inches closer, pressing the warm weight of his body against your calves. The heat seeps through the layers, slow but profound. Some medieval households kept lapdogs specifically for this purpose. They weren't pets in the sentimental sense, not really, but little biological radiators. Some were trained to lie on the stomachs of the ill to draw out fever. Others warmed hands before mass. Yours is better. He expects nothing, asks for nothing, and offers the purest form of companionship, warmth without words, presence without performance. He huffs quietly. The sound barely rises above the bedding. You feel it more than hear it, like a soft burst of wind trapped between folds. One paw kicks out in a dream. You smile again, even though no one can see it. He's not your only source of heat either. Some nights the cat joins, not always. She's more selective, more regal, more suspicious of how often you twitch in your sleep. When she does grace you with her presence, she settles behind your knees, purring like a lullaby. Tonight she's not here, and you accept that without disappointment. Cats are like tiny gods. You're lucky if they show up at all, and you never get to ask why when they don't. There's an open debate, among nobles and servants alike, about whether animals should be allowed in beds at all. Some say it's unhygienic, others claim it's an insult to royal dignity. One bishop once declared that dogs in bed were a sign of moral decline. You're fairly certain that Bishop never had to sleep in a turret chamber during a snowstorm. Balthazar isn't a luxury. He's survival wrapped in fur. And besides, you're not alone in this. You've overheard whispers from the maids about a certain duchess who sleeps with 2 greyhounds, one on either side like furry sentinels, and that the dowager queen keeps a cat under her pillow wrapped in silk. Even the cook's assistant, who barely earns enough for bread and soap, lets his scruffy dog sleep under the hearthstone with him. It's a human thing, really. No matter how high or low we sit on the ladder, we want something warm beside us when the cold presses in. Balthazar shifts again, this time stretching one leg out against your foot, his nails barely grazing the sheet. You flinch reflexively. His claws are dull, but unexpected. Then you adjust, allowing space for him to expand. His body is warm, heavy, oddly grounding. Your legs uncurl slightly, grateful for the contact. One of the blankets slips a little in the movement, and cold air slithers in across your shoulder blades. You hiss softly, dragging it back into place, retucking yourself in. Balthazar doesn't move. He trusts you to figure it out, and you do. The curtain rustles slightly as another draught from the window stirs it. You hear it before you feel it, a soft flap, like a tired bird's wings. The fire's been dead for hours now. The bricks lost their heat long ago. Your breath is visible again, just faintly, as you exhale through your nose, but the dog at your feet is radiating a slow, steady heat, and that, more than the bedding or the wine or the dozen layers of linen and wool, is what saves you. There's a comfort in his presence that reaches beyond temperature. It's the knowledge that something else is awake with you, even in a world as dark and silent as this. You've had nights before when sleep wouldn't come at all, when the silence grew too loud or the shadows too long, and fear crept in like fog under a door. But those nights were before Balthazar, before the warmth of another breathing thing made the space feel less empty. You've never spoken to him in full words. Not really. You mutter things, phrases, nicknames, but he listens, or he pretends to, and that's enough. In a life where so much is prescribed and polished, where even your laughter is measured and your words rehearsed, it's a relief to exist beside something that expects nothing but presence. You reach down now, one hand slipping beneath the fur layer to touch his back. He's warm, almost hot, his coat thick and rough like a hearthrug. He stirs but doesn't wake. You let your hand rest there a moment, just long enough to soak up a little more heat. Then you pull it back, curl it beneath your chin, sink into the pillows. You don't know what time it is. The sky beyond the shutter is still dark. The castle hasn't stirred, but you feel the rhythm of sleep returning, heavy, patient, insistent. The warmth at your feet pulls you down like an anchor. Your thoughts slow. The weight of the covers feels protective, not oppressive. The cold outside your bed no longer matters. You'll sleep now. You know it. Not because you're tired, though you are, but because this moment is as close to perfect as this place allows. The warmth of another body, the silence of the dark, and the steady, slow breath of something that trusts you enough to sleep beside you. You don't open your eyes right away, but you know you're awake again. It's a different kind of waking than before, slower, less startled, like a tide pulling you gently toward the shore instead of crashing you against it. You lie still, hoping that maybe, if you pretend hard enough, sleep will come back for one more round. But it doesn't. Not this time. The world is just alert enough now to pull you into it. It's colder. You can feel that immediately. Not bitter, not dangerous, but more insistent. Your breath hovers in front of your face like a ghost with nothing better to do. The warmth you'd built earlier has thinned. Your legs are still cocooned in a quiet heat where Balthazar sleeps, but the air around your neck and chest has taken on a sharpness that whispers, "You're not dreaming anymore." You roll your shoulders beneath the blankets. The movement stirs the layers and invites a thin stream of air to slide across your ribs. You curse yourself silently for shifting. This time your body isn't waking from discomfort. It's alert for another reason. You hear something, not loud, not alarming, but there. A voice maybe. a whisper just beyond the curtain. You can't tell if it's inside your room or somewhere down the hall. Just a thread of sound, too soft to make out the words, too real to ignore. You freeze, one hand gripping the edge of your pillow, the other curled tight against your stomach. This is how stories begin. The ones passed from nursemaid to child. The whispering in the night, the voice that calls softly from beyond the door. A girl hears it, answers, and is never seen again. You know the stories. You've told them, laughing over cider with other girls in the summer months, but it's winter now, and darkness plays different games when the air is this thin. You tell yourself it's nothing, a draught, a servant, a guard outside speaking to another. It happens. You live in a castle, not a tomb. Sound travels strangely through thick stone and narrow halls. It echoes off flagstones, it turns corners. Sometimes it plays tricks. Still you listen. Nothing follows. No second whisper, no footsteps, no creak of the door. The silence returns slowly, like a tide rolling in to cover a footprint. Balthazar shifts at your feet and snorts softly in his sleep, unconcerned. And somehow that makes you relax. If there were danger, he'd know. He always knows. You adjust your pillow, fingers slowly unclenching. It's silly. You know it. And yet fear has a way of curling around you in the dark, sliding through even the smallest cracks in your logic. It doesn't take much, just a whisper and a half-forgotten story to make the room feel full of eyes. The truth is, the cold makes the mind strange. It makes everything feel slower, darker, heavier. There's an old belief, one you've heard whispered in the kitchens, that souls wander more freely in the winter, that the veil between worlds is thinner when the nights stretch long and the fire dies early. You don't know what you believe exactly, but you do know this. Winter makes people imagine things, especially when they're awake too long and sleep never comes quite deep enough. To comfort yourself, you reach for the small psalter tucked into the pocket sewn beneath your pillow. You don't read it. Not really. It's more a talisman than anything now. The leather cover is soft with age, and the tiny metal clasp clicks gently under your thumb. You whisper the first line of a prayer without thinking, more habit than faith. It's not the kind of prayer meant to save kingdoms, just one meant to guard the sleeper from bad dreams and creeping fears. The act is enough. You feel calmer, not warmer exactly, but less brittle. You turn onto your side, pressing your cheek into the pillow and pulling the blanket back up to your chin. Your fingers find the quilt's edge by muscle memory, gripping it like a rope in a sea. You think again about the voice, if it was a voice. It might have been the wind. It often is. You've heard it cry like a child before, or hum like a woman singing lullabies. The window slit in your room is covered with a wooden shutter, latched tight and lined with stuffed rags to keep the draft out. But nothing stops the sound completely. The wind finds its way in, through cracks, through memory. You drift again. Not asleep yet, but not fully present. A warm greyness begins to pull at the edges of your thoughts. You try to count backwards from 50, but only make it to 42 before losing the thread. That's how sleep sneaks back in, slowly, in the absence of fear, but not before one last ritual. You whisper, out loud this time, the old rhyme your nursemaid taught you, half blessing, half superstition. Watch my head and warm my feet, let no bad spirit through this sheet. It's silly, childish, but you say it anyway. The words are soft, barely more than a breath, and they vanish into the dark like smoke. Then sleep returns. You slip back under, deeper this time, the kind of sleep that doesn't come easy in castles, the kind that finally forgets the cold, the voice, the stone. There's a long-standing scholarly argument, because of course there is, about whether the medieval nobility actually believed in spirits, or if it was all theatre, inherited from folk tales and fear. The answer, you suspect, is simpler than scholars want it to be. When you live in places built of centuries and ghosts, you don't need to believe in spirits. You just don't want to anger them. So you say the rhyme, you hold the book, you stay under the covers, just in case. And now, beneath layers of wool and fur and old prayers, with Balthazar sleeping warm against your toes and the whisper long gone, you let the castle have its silence again. You don't remember waking, not exactly. It's more like you rise slowly from the bottom of a still pond, drifting up through silence into the space between dreams and awareness. Your eyes don't open, but your senses return one by one. The feeling of the bed under your hips, the weight of the covers on your chest, the warmth pooled faintly around your feet where Balthazar still sleeps, unmoving. There's a kind of quiet that's thicker than sound. You know this hour. It's neither night nor morning, just the hollow gap in between. A time so still it feels like the world is holding its breath. And yet, somewhere beyond the bed curtains, the castle is not entirely asleep. You hear something, low, muffled, not threatening, just the sound of someone else awake. A pair of footsteps, slow and soft, padding across the corridor stones outside your room. The floor out there is colder than the inside of a well, and you can practically hear the hush in those steps, someone trying not to wake the walls. It's the maid, you're sure of it. The quiet one with the long braid and the perfect memory for where your slippers land when you kick them off too early. She moves like shadow, like she's been trained to never exist fully. But you've heard her before, you've made a game of it, guessing which hour of the night she makes her rounds, checking bedchambers, stoking embers, collecting whatever cups and trays were left behind. She has a lantern, small and covered, that glows just enough to guide her hand without lighting her face. Sometimes you wonder if she ever gets to sleep, or if her nights are stitched together like yours, full of listening, tending, making quiet bargains with the cold. She won't come in unless you call for her. That's the rule. Once the bed curtains are drawn, the boundary is set. Only emergencies, real ones with blood or fire, can break it. The castle respects the silence of those sleeping, even if the walls do not. So you lie still and let her pass. The footsteps fade, swallowed by stone and distance, until the corridor returns to its usual hush. Your body has gone stiff again. It always does when you sleep deeply in one position too long. You try to stretch your legs, but the weight of the covers pushes back. You bend one knee slightly, adjusting, feeling the bedsheets tug and pull like they have opinions about your choices. Somewhere under the mound of quilts, Balthazar huffs once in protest and resettles. You've thought before about what it means to sleep in a place like this. A royal bed, yes, but not truly your own. You're tucked into this life the same way you're tucked into these blankets, bound by layers of tradition, expectation, and stitched-in etiquette. Even in sleep you play a part. Even under these curtains you are a princess. And yet, this hour feels like yours. No one's watching. No one's asking. The weight of court life, of names and titles and carefully chosen phrases, all of it is muffled by the silence of pre-dawn. It's like being between pages of a book. No beginning, no end, just the soft space where you're allowed to just be. It's too early to rise, too late to go fully back under, so you let your mind wander instead. You remember distantly a story your tutor once told, of a queen who trained herself to wake every hour of the night to say a prayer. Not out of devotion, but out of fear. She believed that death came quickest to those who slept too deeply. So she'd wake herself, recite a verse, listen to the silence, and fall back into her pillows with one eye open. You never asked if it worked. You wonder how many others are awake right now. The guards at the outer gate stomping their feet to keep warm. The cook in the lower kitchens, maybe already stirring the first batch of oat porridge for the stable hands. A wet nurse, maybe, somewhere behind a wooden screen, holding a child who won't be quiet. A monk in the chapel, whispering matins. The castle is a living thing, even in its sleep. Always someone awake, always someone cold, always someone praying the sun will rise just a little faster. You shift again, finding the exact centre of your mattress, letting your head sink deeper into the feather pillow. It's lost some of its fluff, flattened over the years into a shape that fits you precisely. There's a comfort in that, the quiet loyalty of objects that know your weight. One historical curiosity: some noble families rotated their sleep routines seasonally. In summer, they rose with the sun and retired early. But in winter, their nights stretched long and strange, broken into first sleep and second sleep. People would wake in the middle of the night, rid prayers, stoke the fire, even have small meals before settling back down. You've always thought it sounded odd, but here you are, awake between two halves of sleep, eating up the silence like it's soup for the soul. The air inside your bed is warmer now, just barely. You can feel it starting to settle again, your own breath turning it into something closer to bearable. Your hands no longer feel brittle. Your toes, still pressed to Balthazar's side, have stopped aching. You press one hand gently to your stomach, palm flat, feeling the slow rise and fall. Your body is tired, but not from movement, from being, from enduring. That's what winter is here, a long test of patience and rituals and quiet resistance. You whisper something to yourself, not a prayer, not a rhyme, just a sound. Your own voice in your own ears, reminding you that you're still here. The curtain doesn't move, the wind has quieted again, the stones are still, even the bed creaks have ceased. It's that rare moment in the night when the world feels paused, holding you like a breath before the next sentence. You close your eyes, and you wait for the sleep to come back, or for the sun to rise, or both. Your cheek is pressed to the pillow, still warm in that delicate spot where your skin has lingered for hours, but the cold is creeping in around the edges again, slipping through the seams of the bedding like an uninvited thought. Your toes are curled, out of instinct more than necessity, and your hands are tucked under your chest, one balled into a soft fist. You lie still, listening, not for footsteps this time, or wind or voices, but for something smaller, something you hope you won't hear but always might, the delicate, unmistakable sound of scratching. You haven't heard it tonight, not yet, but you remember. Fleas, the unwelcome, inevitable house guests of any medieval bed, even one wrapped in velvet curtains and embroidered with your family crest. They don't care about rank. They don't care how many tapestries are on your walls or how often your sheets are aired out over the battlements. If there's warmth, if there's breath, if there's blood, they'll find you. Last winter they found you. It started with one bite. A small, angry welt behind your knee, then another, then the itch that spread like gossip. The servants changed the sheets, scoured the straw mattress, lit bundles of dried herbs and waved them like protective charms around the posts of your bed. The castle physician offered sage-soaked linen wraps and muttered something about humours. Nothing worked. For weeks, you slept like a prisoner, still, tense, waiting for the next bite. You still carry the twitch from that time, a little tremor of distrust that makes your skin shiver when there's nothing touching it. Even now, in this still and quiet hour, you wonder if one might be there, hiding in the down, waiting. Your leg itches, you ignore it, you will not scratch, you refuse to surrender. You once asked your nursemaid why no one had found a way to keep the fleas out altogether. She laughed, fondly, but with a weariness that said, "Oh, my sweet summer idiot, it's just how things are. When warmth returns, so do they. You learn to live with it. You learn to share your bed, even with enemies. There's a strange sort of medieval humility in that, how the body, royal or not, is always at the mercy of the smallest things. Fleas, lice, bedbugs, creatures that slip between threads and dance on your skin like they own the place. It doesn't matter if you wear ermine or burlap, the fleas make no distinction. Your fingers twitch again. You give in this time, scratching lightly at your calf. It could be imaginary. It probably is. But scratching makes you feel in control, even if only for a second. That's the worst part, you think. Not the discomfort, not the bite, the helplessness, the knowledge that your warm, safe bed is also a battlefield. There's a fringe remedy you once overheard in the servant quarters, setting a shallow dish of water near the bed with a floating candle in the centre. Supposedly the fleas jump toward the flame and drown. You tried it. The candle went out halfway through the night, and in the morning the water was full of ash and exactly 2 drowned fleas. You've since returned to the more traditional method of frequent sheet changing and muttered threats. One of your friends at court, bless her naive soul, once insisted that noble beds were immune, that all the lavender sachets and pomanders and rose oil rinses made her less appetizing. You wanted to tell her that fleas are equal opportunity monsters, that they'll bite you no matter how many petals you've rolled in. But you let her talk. It's comforting to believe in small protections, even if they're lies. And so, like every other winter night, you keep still, breathe through the itch, and hope you're safe until morning. At least you have Balthazar. He gets bitten too, and you've seen him sit upright in the middle of the night, eyes wild, scratching like a mad creature. There's some solidarity in that. 2 warm bodies sharing one battlefield. There's even scholarly debate about whether flea infestations were worse in noble homes or peasant ones. The peasants had fewer clothes, fewer layers, fewer places for the bugs to hide. Nobles, on the other hand, had furs and cushions and drapes and hangings and servants with dusty sleeves. More luxury meant more hiding places. More warmth meant more invitations. You wonder sometimes whether kings ever woke up scratching, or if they had someone else do it for them. The scratching sound comes back to your memory, unbidden. That delicate, rapid tick-tick-tick, sometimes from inside the bed frame, sometimes from beneath the straw. You remind yourself it's quiet tonight, truly quiet. No twitching, no rustling, no movement but your own breath and Balthazar's little doggy grunts. Still, you reach your hand toward the small pouch tucked under your pillow, a mixture of dried lavender, rosemary and pennyroyal. Folk wisdom says it repels insects. Your maid refreshes it every few weeks. You don't know if it actually works, but you like the smell. Earthy, sharp, something alive. You press it to your face for a moment, breathing in the scent and feel just a little safer. Your back relaxes. The itch has faded. You shift once more beneath the covers, feeling the mattress give slightly under your weight. The straw rustles, but nothing else moves. You reach down to touch Balthazar's back, reassured by the steady rise and fall of his breathing. The wind has changed again outside, softer now. The kind of wind that brushes instead of howls. The kind that makes the castle creak in its joints like an old man turning over in bed. You're still a little on edge, but sleep is coming again, seeping into your limbs like ink across old parchment. The kind of sleep that follows tension, wrapping you up in its own thick, grey silence. The kind that lets you forget for a while that you share your castle, your bed, and your body heat with a world you can't see. By the time the cough starts, you already know what it means. It's not the dry little tickle that comes from sleeping with your mouth open in stale air, nor the single polite clearing of a throat that could be fixed with a sip of water and a warm brick. This one is deeper, wet, a scrape at the base of your lungs dragging up something cold and old and stubborn. You press a hand to your chest as it happens again and again, barely muffled under the weight of the quilts. Your ribs feel like they've been rung like a bell, and just like that the cold has finally made its way in. You're not sick yet. But you know the early warning signs, the tightness in your throat, the heaviness in your eyes, the feeling that your nose is beginning to rebel against the air. There's a fine art to medieval illness, and you're now teetering right on the edge, balancing on the knife point between a passing chill and a full-blown fever. The trick is catching it early, responding before it digs in, which, in the year of our Lord this particular freezing nightmare, means a series of unpleasant but time-honoured rituals. You sigh, low and rasping, your breath hitches halfway. You know what's coming next. You'll tell the maid in the morning. She'll frown, immediately begin boiling water and muttering about clearing the lungs, which sounds helpful until you remember what that actually means. Bowls of steaming herbs, mustard plasters, a hot iron pressed into a brick and wrapped in linen to be placed right below your collarbones. And if things go south, a poultice. Onion, maybe, or crushed garlic bound in goose fat and tied against your skin with linen bandages. You don't dread the smell. You dread the sympathy in their eyes. They'll tell your mother. She'll send someone to watch over you while you sleep, and just like that, your private world, your little cave of wool and breath, will no longer be yours. The maid will hover, the nursemaid will suggest prayers, the priest might offer holy water, and you'll lie there in your bed, hacking into a rag and wondering if you'll make it to spring. Of course, you'll live. Probably. You've been through worse. But there's a particular kind of helplessness that comes from being a princess too weak to sit up, coughing into your pillow while everyone else pretends not to panic. Your body, so often dressed and arranged and presented like a trophy, becomes something else entirely. Unruly, leaky, embarrassing. You roll to your side, hoping a change of position will quiet your lungs. Balthazar lifts his head briefly, sniffs, then sighs, and lies back down, unconcerned. You envy him. It's strange, the rituals of sickness in this place. Some of them are practical, herbs that help, broths that soothe. But others are pure desperation dressed as tradition. There's the boiled wine, sweetened with honey and spiced with pepper, meant to drive out the bad air. There's the fire-stoking ceremony, where 3 fresh logs are thrown onto the hearth all at once, each one bearing a different emblem scratched into the bark. Your family does that one every time someone develops a fever. It never works. But they keep doing it, because sometimes the illusion of control is the only medicine people trust. There's even a theory, a newer one, courtesy of the physician who smells like vinegar and insists on wearing gloves indoors, that sickness doesn't come from spirits or air at all, but from imbalance within. Too much black bile, not enough heat. He loves to say it's all about humours, like your body's a soup someone left on the fire too long. You don't really care about the theory. All you want is not to be coughing at 3 in the morning with your throat burning and your ears buzzing like a hive. Another historical curiosity. In some noble households, It was considered improper to show weakness. Ladies of high rank were expected to suffer illness silently, as a sign of virtue and fortitude. No moaning, no complaints, no visible signs of pain. You remember one woman, your mother's cousin, who nearly died from a lung sickness because she refused to admit she couldn't breathe. She just kept sitting at meals, pale and glassy-eyed, sipping cold soup and pretending she was fine. You're not that foolish. You've grown up in the cold, in a castle that waits for weakness like a hawk circling above a tired mouse. You know better than to let it linger. So you sit up slowly and reach for the cloth-wrapped brick the maid left near your head before she went to sleep. It's cold now, but not yet stone-hard. You press it against your chest anyway, just for the idea of warmth. The heat has long since faded, but the memory of it remains. You wish you could drink something. Hot wine, warm broth, even water steeped in sage. But the tray beside your bed is empty. The goblet is dry, the oatcake long gone, crumbs barely clinging to the linen, and you don't dare call out for more. The maid would come, yes, but with questions, with concern, with more people, and right now you need the solitude more than you need the cure. You lie back down, brick still clutched loosely in your hands, and pull the blankets over your chin. You inhale slowly through your nose, exhale through your mouth, trying to trick your lungs into quiet. It works, a little. The cough fades, for now. The castle is quieter now than it's been all night. Not a creak, not a murmur, not even the wind. The silence is almost suspicious. You wonder if others are awake in their own chambers, curled under their own blankets, coughing into the dark, silently bargaining for spring. You think for a moment about those stories they used to tell you as a child, about the snow woman, the winter spirit who passed through castles during the coldest hours, touching the foreheads of those she meant to carry away. She moved through walls, they said. Her breath was frost, her fingers were wind. She only came when the fire was out and the hearth was cold and the sleeper was sick. You used to believe it. Now, you're not so sure you don't. You close your eyes again, one arm folded under the pillow, the other wrapped around the cooling brick. You listen to your breath, to the quiet hum of the dog at your feet, to the absolute stillness of the room. Maybe it's nothing. Maybe you'll wake tomorrow and feel fine. But just in case, you say a quiet, forgotten prayer your nursemaid taught you long ago. One meant to keep the fever away. One meant to make the cold pass through you without stopping. Then you let the covers hold you. You don't move again. The cough doesn't return, for now. But you know the fight's not over yet. You lie awake now, not from pain or panic, but from the deeper, more exhausting ache of being cold for too long. It's not the kind of cold that jolts or bites anymore. That sharp edge has dulled. This is the quiet kind, the patient chill that seeps into your bones and settles there like an old tenant who has no intention of leaving. It's in your shoulders, your knees, your spine. Even your thoughts feel like they're moving slower. This is the hour where you begin to wonder if warmth was ever real, or just a well-told rumour. You blink slowly, trying to focus on something in the darkness beyond your bed curtain. Of course, there's nothing. Not even a glow from the hearth now. Just the thick, featureless black that presses gently against your eyelids, whether they're open or closed. The brick you'd clutched earlier is now cool, almost damp with the weight of the surrounding air. You set it aside with a quiet thud, letting it rest somewhere near the edge of your world, where all the other once-warm things go to die. The bed doesn't help. It's too still. The mattress has shifted beneath you over the hours, sagging in all the wrong places. A tuft of straw must have migrated to your shoulder, because it's poking you insistently, and you could adjust your position, but the idea of moving even one blanket out of place feels like suicide. So you lie there, tolerating the stab, because it's better than the alternative. This is where your mind starts its slow march into dangerous territory. Not night terrors, not nightmares, just thoughts. The kind that only crawl out when your body's too tired to keep them at bay. You think about every time you've shivered in this room, every winter, every night like this one. The frost that blooms on the window slits by mid-January, the way your breath fogs in the candlelight, the steady drip of condensation from the stones above your bed when the outer walls begin to weep from the cold. You've lived in this castle your entire life, and still, your bones haven't made peace with it. The cold here isn't just weather, it's personality. It knows you. It waits for you. It remembers. You could swear the stones have voices sometimes. Soft, brittle ones, not speaking exactly but exhaling. Whispers that filter through cracks and knots in the wood, murmuring just out of reach. There's a part of you that believes the castle wants to keep you cold, not to punish you, but to remind you. Of what, you don't know. Your limits, perhaps. Your lineage. Your place in the grand, drafty hierarchy of history. But more than anything, it seems to want you to remember that nothing is ever permanent. Not warmth, not comfort, not safety. Everything can be taken, 1 degree at a time. You remember hearing once about a distant noblewoman who had her bedchamber painted red, just to trick her body into thinking it was warmer than it was. She filled it with tapestries of bonfires and desert flowers. She lined the floor with rugs so thick she nearly drowned in them, and still the cold came. It always does. Even art can't keep it out. Your father once called it the chill in the bones, said it was different from other kinds of cold. He'd been in battle, in storms, in icy rivers, but none of that matched the kind of winter that seeps into your marrow and refuses to leave until the spring thaws your skeleton from the inside out. He told you that during one particularly brutal year, he slept with 3 furs, 2 dogs, and a scalding hot poker placed beneath the foot of his bed. And even then, he woke up coughing blood from the cold that had nested in his chest like a bird. So yes, you know you're lucky. You have layers. You have servants who bring warm stones and tuck you in like precious cargo. You have furs. You have wine. You have a dog. But none of that changes the fact that your fingers are numb, your throat is tight, and you're curled into yourself like an old parchment scroll, just waiting to be unrolled again in the morning sun. There's an old wives' tale, probably just servant gossip, that says when your bones feel this cold, it means the winter has taken notice of you, that you've been marked, that you need to eat something sweet or speak aloud your name before sleep, or risk being forgotten by spring. You don't believe it. Not really. But still, your lips part, and in a whisper so quiet it barely reaches your own ears, you say your name, just in case. You try to think of something warm, a fire, a bath, a summer afternoon in the orchard, the stone benches hot to the touch, your hair damp with sweat and sun, bees humming lazily around the pear blossoms. You remember how you once leaned against the south wall of the courtyard and let the sun bake into your back until you thought you might fall asleep standing up. You would give almost anything to feel that again now. Balthazar shifts slightly, his little body tucked into a crescent behind your legs. You can feel his warmth bleeding into you, subtle and slow. It's not much, but it's real. You reach back, fingers sliding gently under the fur layer until you find him. You don't pet exactly, just make contact. It's enough. Scholars still debate whether castle life in winter was unbearable or just ordinary. They argue over how much people really suffered, how creative they got, how strong their tolerance had to be. You think it's both. You've adapted. You've learned the tricks, how to wrap your legs, how to warm a pillow with breath, how to avoid stepping on stone barefoot no matter how urgent your need. But adaptation doesn't mean ease. It just means you survive slightly more gracefully. The bed creaks under your next exhale. You let your eyes close again, but the cold is still there, sitting in your joints like it owns them. You don't expect to fall fully asleep now. This late into the night you only hope to drift, float a little above the pain, carried on the rhythm of the wind tapping the shutters and the even thump of your heartbeat beneath your ribs. Morning will come eventually. It always does. The fire will be lit. The maids will bustle in with hot water and scold you for leaving your nose uncovered. Someone will notice the way your voice scratches, and you'll be offered a ginger wrap or a mustard paste or worse. The cold will still be there, but it will be shared, distributed among the waking bodies of the castle again. But until then, you lie still, a sleeping secret wrapped in fur and memory, whispering warmth back into your bones. You're not bathing today. Let's be absolutely clear about that. In fact, the very idea of bathing right now, on this brittle, bone-rattling morning where even the thought of peeling off a single wool layer feels like a threat, is laughable. The tub, that deep copper basin dragged up from the warming room on wheels with one reluctant servant at each end, may as well be a frozen lake. And the water, even if it's brought straight from the kitchen hearth, steaming and sweetened with lavender or bay leaf, it will cool into misery before the first pail is emptied. So no, you're staying under the covers. You're not dirty exactly. Not in the ways that matter here. You haven't been in the stables or the kitchens or the training yard. You've been wrapped in layers, gently sweating through linen and wool and not much else. The body's clean enough when it's cold enough. That's a rule everyone pretends not to follow and absolutely does. Still, there's a basin in the corner of the room, a small one, metal, dented at the rim, lined with frost from the night air. Inside is the water the maid poured last night before curfew. It's not frozen over, not quite, but there's a film on top. You can see your reflection in it now, distorted and pale and vaguely resentful. It dares you to touch it. You don't. Instead, you lie where you are, arms tucked tight, face barely peeking above the pile of blankets like a mouse in a warren. Even blinking feels like a chore. Your hair is pinned back loosely in braids, more for structure than style, and your skin feels dry under the collar of your nightgown. You want a hot cloth to wipe your face. You want lemon oil, warm milk, the soft rasp of linen over your neck. But you'd have to get up for that, and that's simply not happening right now. There's something very medieval about the idea of delaying cleanliness for the sake of survival. Your mother used to joke that winter was a time of holy stink, when the saints understood that bathing was vanity, and shivering nobly in your own filth was part of character building. The priest even gave a sermon once, comparing excessive washing to gluttony. "Clean souls, not clean skin," he said, waving his hand like he'd personally scrubbed the gates of heaven. He smelled like camphor and crusted incense ash. No one took it to heart, but no one argued either. One of your tutors, an older woman with a fondness for science no one asked for, claimed that bathing too often in winter caused vapours in the blood and weakened the body's resistance to frost. She said the heat from the bath opened your pores, inviting cold in like a thief through an unlocked door. That image has never left you. It's why you haven't truly bathed since before the frost came. You've sponged, you've dabbed, but immersion, not since October. The last time you bathed properly, you nearly fainted from the shock of stepping out. The water had been hot, nearly scalding and glorious. But then the castle air hit you like a slap and you stood there, naked and steaming, feeling your body try to remember how to be solid again. Your maid wrapped you in everything she could grab, fur, linen, wool, her own apron, but the cold had already seeped in. You coughed for 2 days after that. No one blamed the bath out loud, but you knew better. Some scholars debate how often people really bathed in medieval castles. The clean sheet propaganda would have you believe it was regular, even luxurious. Pools of rose water, long hours with combs and oils, warm towels pressed by the hearth, and sure, that might happen in the heat of summer or during a royal event when image mattered more than comfort. But here, now, on a morning like this, not a chance. You shift slightly under the covers, nose briefly exposed to the air before you tuck it back under. You do want to be clean, just not cold and clean. There's a difference. You'd settle for a warmed cloth to wipe your face and hands, maybe a quick rinse with rose water if it's been set out. And tomorrow, maybe tomorrow, you'll ask for a steam basin, the kind that turns your room into a wet cave for an hour while you sit, covered to the chin, breathing in peppermint and rosemary like it's a healing spell. You always feel like a wilted vegetable in a cooking pot, but at least it warms your bones. You reach up to scratch your scalp gently. It doesn't itch much. Your hair was plaited before bed and wrapped in a cloth, but it feels slightly too oily now, like it's remembered you haven't washed it since the last full moon. The maids will brush it later, tugging it free from its braids and picking out any flakes with fine-toothed combs. They'll braid it again, tighter this time, and sprinkle powder through it to make it smell faintly of lavender and something vaguely citrusy they won't identify. You'll nod and thank them, and continue pretending that dry cleaning your own head is perfectly normal. There's a weird intimacy to all of it, letting someone else clean you, touch you, brush and dab and scrape and oil you into something that looks effortless. It's all part of the performance of royalty, clean but not too clean, natural but never disorderly, and above all warm-looking even if you're dying inside. Sometimes you envy the peasants in their scratchy tunics and public bathhouses. At least they got to bathe with purpose. Hot water, coarse soap, a single towel, and then off you go. No ceremony, no powdered perfumes, no worrying about whether your linens are scented enough to convince a visiting duchess that you've been kissed by the gods of hygiene. You reach toward the edge of the bed and find the folded cloth your maid left last night, just in case you woke before her. It's stiff, slightly damp, and smells like chamomile and something vaguely metallic. You unfold it under the covers, let it warm a little in your hands, then press it to your forehead. The sensation is almost enough to make you weep. Not because it's comforting, though it is, but because it reminds you just how cold the rest of the room truly is. You wipe your cheeks, your neck, behind your ears, then quickly fold the cloth again and hide it beneath your pillow like it's a sin. Cleanish. Good enough for now. You burrow back into the bedding, whispering to no one in particular that you will not be stepping into a bath today. Not unless the tub walks itself up the stairs, sings you a lullaby, and promises to never let you feel the air again. And as your eyes begin to close once more, you think, there's always spring. You're awake again, not fully, but in that drifting grey space where time folds into itself, and you forget how long you've been lying here. The chamber is still, though not quite silent anymore. Somewhere, far below, a door creaks on its hinge, a slow, drawn-out sound that reaches your ears like it's travelled through water. You don't move. You've lost count of how many times you've woken in this exact position, in this exact chill, but each time you stir, the routine replays itself. The stiff limbs, the cautious breath, the question that flickers through your mind. Is it morning yet? It's not. Not by the quality of the dark. There's a subtle shift in the air before dawn, one that doesn't come from light but from pressure, like the castle itself sighs a little before letting the day in. That hasn't happened yet. Your instincts, honed by dozens of bitter winters, tell you that the night still owns this room. Even Balthazar is curled deep and unmoving, a tight loaf of fur at the crook of your knees. You don't want to wake him. He's more reliable than a hearth, and better company than most courtiers. Instead, you reach out under the blankets for the small stack of books kept within arm's length of the bed. Not scrolls. Those are stored elsewhere. Too fragile. Too annoying. These are small volumes, hand-bound, inked with crooked lines by monks or lesser scribes, and softened at the edges by years of midnight handling. You find the familiar leather spine by touch alone. It's a thin book, mostly blank pages, but interspersed with lines of poetry, bits of borrowed philosophy, and here and there a clumsy drawing you try to pass off as marginalia. You don't read to understand. You read to stay warm in your mind, to distract your body from the unyielding cold. Your breath fogs against the cover as you bring it close, and you hesitate before opening it. Your fingers are stiff, clumsy in the dark. You fumble through the first few pages, eyes squinting. Eventually you find a familiar line. It doesn't matter what it says. You've read it 100 times. Something about stars, something about fire. It's only a sentence, but it tastes warm like mulled wine without the cup. Reading in the dark is a quiet rebellion. You're not supposed to. The light's too poor, the effort too great. You've been warned that it will ruin your eyes, as if the cold won't ruin everything else first. But you do it anyway. You've trained yourself to make out shapes in the gloom, to recognize the spacing between lines, the rise and fall of letters that mean nothing unless you already know them by heart. You could recite them now with your eyes closed. Sometimes you do. There's a debate, one that your tutor adores, about whether literacy is a burden for women like you. Too many ideas, too much time spent thinking instead of smiling quietly and arranging flowers. You smile at that thought now, a thin twitch of the mouth under the covers. You'd like to see any of those flower arrangers survive a single night in your bed, with the wind rattling the shutters and the cold whispering along your spine like a warning. The book smells like dust and ink and old hands. The pages have curled at the edges, and the cover creaks slightly as you turn it. There's a pressed leaf inside, brittle now, once green. From a summer past, from a garden you can't visit this time of year. You found it near the fountain when the roses were still stubbornly blooming in late autumn. You'd kept it without knowing why, maybe as proof that warmth exists, even if it forgets to come back sometimes. Your eyes grow heavier as you read. The words blur together. You don't mind. The goal isn't comprehension, it's rhythm, cadence, something to hold on to while the rest of you floats in a cocoon of fabric and frost. One historical footnote your tutor once mentioned. Some noblewomen kept books as personal diaries, coded with secret symbols or written in languages known only to them. Not to confess sins, though some surely did, but to remember things, moments that would otherwise be swallowed by silence. You like that idea. You've started adding little notes to your own margins, nonsense phrases, overheard jokes, strange dreams that don't make sense by daylight. If someone ever finds this book after you're gone, they'll think you are mad. That comforts you. Balthazar shifts again, this time turning toward you, his small body bumping against your legs with a sleepy grunt. You set the book aside gently, tucking it under the pillow where the herbs are stored. You're too tired to read more. The sentences have grown heavy. Even your breath feels slow now, like the air is thickening. The curtain still holds. No dawn yet. The castle sleeps on, unaware of you wrapped in your linens, reading to ghosts. You stretch once, carefully, drawing the blanket tighter under your chin. Your eyes close. Not for long. Just a blink that grows roots. There's an odd peace in this moment. Not comfort, not joy. But a strange, steady satisfaction. You've made it through another night. Or most of one. You fought the cold with layers and dog heat and borrowed words. You've given yourself something to hold. You've claimed this hour, not for duty or legacy or expectation, but for yourself. And when sleep pulls you under again, it does so softly, like snow drifting into a corner of the castle no one has walked for years. You wake again, and this time you know it's different. The light has changed. It's not sunlight, not yet, but it's also not the deep black velvet of midnight. It's that strange in-between grey, like the world is still deciding whether to be night or morning. The kind of light that doesn't fall, but hovers, just enough to outline the edge of the bedpost, just enough to make the frost on the window shutter shimmer like sugar. You lie still watching it. There's something sacred about this moment, and you don't want to break it just yet. The castle hasn't stirred. No footsteps, no doors, not even the birds have started screaming from the rafters the way they like to when the sun finally dares to appear. This is the part of the morning that belongs to you and no one else. No protocol, no appointments, no maid bustling in with her perfectly polite chaos. Just you, your bed, and the grey light creeping in like a secret. Your body, of course, has not caught up to the idea of morning. Your joints still feel locked in place, like someone wound you tight in your sleep. Your fingers are numb, but no longer from frost, more from hours of immobility, of clenching the blankets like they were the last warm thing on earth. You stretch, cautiously, testing the waters. First your toes, then your legs, then one arm, reaching out of the covers into the morning air like a brave but foolish explorer. It's cold, still, no surprises there, but not the kind of cold that stings anymore. This is the dry, tired cold that knows its time is running out. You take that as a good sign. Balthazar is awake too, you realise, the moment he lets out a groggy little sigh and shuffles upward toward the warmth of your stomach. His body is heavy with sleep, and he flops against you without shame or ceremony. You scratch the top of his head absently, grateful once again for his presence. If royalty has taught you one thing, it's that companionship often arrives in the most practical of packages, a mutt with cold feet and a hot belly. Your throat is still sore, not awful, but rough, like you spent the night whispering secrets to ghosts. You swallow once, testing it, and wince. Not terrible, but not perfect. You'll have to be careful today. If you speak too much too quickly, someone will notice the rasp. And if someone notices, word will reach your mother. And if word reaches your mother, you'll be put to bed with 1,000 instructions and twice as many hot drinks you won't be allowed to refuse, which actually doesn't sound so bad. But still, you don't like the way illness becomes performance here. How the moment someone labels you unwell, your body stops being yours and becomes everyone's business. Suddenly it's all cool cloths and forced broths and half-whispered diagnoses from the physician, while he pretends you're not right there, fully capable of understanding words like congestion and pulmonary. You'd prefer to avoid all that. Instead, you sit up, slowly, one blanket at a time. The topmost cover is velvet, thick and stiff with age. You fold it down and breathe through the small puff of dust that rises from it. The next is fur, brown and coarse, probably wolf, though no one dares confirm that anymore. Below that, your quilted wool blanket lined with linen, then another layer of linen, then the final sheet, cold from exposure. You shift your legs free of the bedding, the cold air prickling your skin like a warning. You don't get up right away. Instead, you take inventory. The bricks near the bed have long since gone cold. No embers, no coals, just dull stone radiating yesterday's heat like a memory that doesn't belong to you anymore. The window shutter is closed tight, but a thin line of light cuts through a crack in the top left corner, dust dancing in the beam. The water in the basin still looks half frozen, and your breath still ghosts visibly as you exhale. You're definitely not taking off your nightgown. Still, you swing your feet over the edge of the bed, gingerly placing them on the wool rug that covers the stone floor beneath. The rug isn't new, it's threadbare in places, pocked with old burn marks and fraying at the edges, but it's there, a buffer between your skin and the world. You whisper a soft thanks to whoever laid it there before your birth. Even royalty stands on someone else's weaving. You reach for your slippers, which your maid placed precisely beside the bed. They're stiff from cold, but mercifully lined. You slide them on, and for a moment, you feel almost human. Then comes the robe, a monstrosity of sheepskin and velvet, too heavy to be elegant, too warm to ever give up. You pull it around your shoulders like armour, its weight familiar, grounding. You cinch the belt tight and brace yourself. This, you've realised, is the moment of choice, the moment that separates those who sleep until the sun forces them out, and those who rise in the liminal cold because they want to, or, at the very least, because staying still feels more like surrender. You walk slowly to the shutter, the cold floor pressing through the thin rug with every step. You unlatch the wooden bar that holds it closed and push it outward just an inch. And there it is. Morning, or the beginning of it at least. The sky's pale, so pale it's barely blue, and the clouds hang like wool combings, thick and soft and low. No sun yet, but the world is lighter. The trees outside the castle walls are coated in ice, each branch sparkling with frost like glass dipped in silver. You can see the breath of the guards at the gatehouse, 2 of them stomping in place, talking with their hands stuffed into their cloaks. The courtyard below is empty, but for a few frozen puddles that glint like tiny mirrors. It's beautiful in that hushed, heartless way that only winter mornings can be. You don't love it, but you respect it. You shut the shutter again, gently, and retreat to your bed. You'll rise soon, wash your face, let the maid in. Begin the day as expected. But for now, you crawl back under the covers, robe and all, and lie there with your dog, your book, your slow breath, and the faint flickering hope that maybe, just maybe, this will be the last cold morning before spring remembers you exist. You must have dozed off again, because when the door creaks open at last it startles you, not in a jolt, but in that slow, confused way where your mind is still catching up to your body. You're curled toward the wall, the covers pulled nearly over your head, and for a moment you don't even bother moving. Let them find you like this, a crumpled heap of warmth and sleep and stubbornness. If they ask why you're not already up, you'll say the dog wouldn't allow it. The door opens only halfway before a head pokes through. A cautious, quiet face wrapped in the usual white linen cap, eyes scanning for signs of life. It's your maid, of course, the same one who's been tending to you since your dresses still trailed behind you like banners. She sees the mountain of blankets and fur, the single braid peeking out, and offers a small smile, like she's found you exactly as expected. "Good morning, my lady," she says gently, voice no louder than the rustle of a drying sheet. "You're awake, then?" You grunt. Or maybe it's a word. It's hard to say. She takes that as permission and slips into the room fully, her footsteps muffled by soft-soled shoes. She's carrying a small brass tray, steam rising from the cup balanced in the centre. At once the scent fills the room, clove and honey, maybe ginger, and something sharper beneath it, something medicinal. She sets the tray down on the side table, careful not to knock over your stack of books. You shift under the blankets, reluctant but curious. You don't sit up yet. You wait to see what she'll do next. She's not fooled. She begins her routine. First she opens the hearth vent. There's no fire, hasn't been one since yesterday afternoon, but she checks it all the same, brushing a little ash aside and inserting a fresh kindling bundle, with the efficiency of someone who could do this blindfolded. She doesn't light it yet. That will wait until you've risen and the bed has been cleared. Next comes the basin. She sets it near the edge of the bed, removing the ice-topped water and replacing it with something warm. Steam rises, fogging the small mirror beside it. She adds a splash of rosewater and a sprig of dried thyme, murmuring something under her breath. Not a prayer, just a rhythm. She works like the castle does, without urgency, but with purpose. Finally she sets the cup in your hand. You accept it without a word, cradling it in both palms like it's a talisman. The ceramic is warm but not scalding, the surface mottled from years of handling. You breathe in the steam, letting it thaw your nose from the inside. The first sip is sharp, bitter with clove, pungent with crushed root, but the honey tempers it, and soon your throat feels less like it's lined with gravel. You sigh, soft and involuntary. She gives you a nod that says, "I told you so," then begins untying the curtains around your bed. Each panel is folded back with practiced ease, and light floods in. Grey, overcast light from the narrow window slit, pale as milk and just as cold. You blink against it, squinting like a cave creature. Balthazar groans at the intrusion, shuffling deeper into the blankets. You both understand each other perfectly in this moment. "Looks colder than yesterday," she says, as if you needed the reminder. She's opened the window just a crack to refresh the air, and the breeze slices through the room like a knife dipped in snow. You pull the blankets tighter, though you know resistance is futile. Your maid walks to the wardrobe and begins selecting the layers for the day. It's a full ritual: chemise, kirtle, surcoat, overskirt, shawl. Wool upon linen upon wool. Somewhere in the mix is a fur-lined collar that scratches your neck and smells faintly of lavender and old smoke. She lays them out with a reverence usually reserved for altars. "You'll need the heavier boots," she murmurs, half to herself, half to you. There's frost in the hall. Ice on the stairwell again. She moves like water, like the room itself has bent to her pace, and all the while you stay in bed, cupping the tea and letting the heat work its way down into your core, molecule by molecule. It won't last, but for now it's enough. As she brushes out your hair, carefully, gently, untangling each knot without comment, you stare at the window. The castle beyond is quiet, its courtyard still empty, save for two bundled stable boys kicking ice from the water trough. Snow hasn't fallen, but you can feel it in the air, the heaviness, the hush, like the sky is holding its breath. You consider your schedule for the day and almost laugh. A meeting with the steward about grain stores, a reading with your language tutor, embroidery with your mother and the Duchess who smells like vinegar and wears rings on every finger. All of it in layers and layers of wool, wrapped like a roast, pretending the cold doesn't claw at your ribs every time you sit still for too long. It's all so normal, so routine, and yet here you are, still shaking off the frost that tried to claim you during the night. You finish the tea. She sets the cup aside, hands you a warmed cloth and says, "Let's get you dressed before the fire dies again." You nod. It's not warmth that wakes you. It's not comfort. It's motion, the routine, the ritual, the daily refusal to let the cold win. So you rise. You let her help you out of the nightgown. You wash your face in the steaming basin, wincing at the contrast between water and air. You step into your chemise, then your kirtle, and layer by layer you begin to become a person again. Not just a bundle of cold limbs in a bed, a princess, a body, a mind wrapped in the armour of the day. And as she ties the final ribbon at your waist and smooths the shawl across your shoulders, you take one last look at the bed, still rumpled and warm from the hours you spent in it, fighting the darkness. You'll come back to it tonight. You always do. But for now, you face the castle, and the cold, and whatever comes next. The corridor greets you like an enemy pretending to be polite. It's quiet, dim, and lined with arched windows that allow the cold to slither through the tiniest gaps in the glass and stone, forming invisible fingers that prod at your cheeks and knuckles. Your slippers scuff softly against the floor, and even with 3 layers of wool wrapped around your legs, the chill of the stone presses up through the soles like a whisper. The torches have burned low, little more than glowing embers now, and the scent of melted tallow and ash lingers in the air, mixing with the faint aroma of dried thyme that someone, optimistically, must have scattered in the rushes. You pull your shawl tighter across your chest, not because it helps, but because it's something to do. The hallway stretches ahead like a tunnel between worlds. Behind you, the warmth of your bed, what little there was of it. Ahead, duty, conversation, the theatre of being a princess. A pair of servants passes, heads down, arms full of linens and folded cloaks. They nod without stopping, and you nod back, barely. It's early enough that most of the castle is still groggy. No loud voices yet, no bustling chatter in the great hall. Just these quiet steps, yours and theirs, echoing like ghosts down the corridors. You imagine, absurdly, that the castle is watching you walk its spine, amused by your efforts to appear composed in the face of its 1,000-year indifference. Every now and then you feel the floor dip, not visually, just energetically. like the weight of the centuries presses a little heavier in certain spots. This stretch of hall, for instance, between the tapestry of St. Eustace and the creaking lintel above the servants' stair, this is the coldest part of the corridor. Always has been, no matter the season. You asked once if there were a draught, a broken stone, a flaw in the masonry. The steward only shrugged. Some parts of the castle remember, he said. Some places just hold on to things. You wonder what this stretch remembers. A death? A secret? An old winter that never ended? Balthazar, finely roused and trotting at your heel like a night's shadow, pauses as you pass that spot. He sniffs the air. You pause with him, just briefly. It smells no different than the rest of the hall, and yet your skin tightens along your neck. You move on quickly, your slippers brushing over worn flagstones, trying not to look like you're fleeing. Your first destination is the solar, that upper chamber where the morning sun is supposed to come streaming in through the leaded glass and make everything seem tolerable. It doesn't today. The sky is low and pale, the kind of sky that makes snow feel imminent even if the air hasn't decided yet. But the solar has cushions, and a brazier, and, if the maids have remembered, the chance of spiced tea and a bowl of dried fruit placed near your chair. You cling to that hope like a lifeline. You arrive, knock softly and push the door open. The room is mostly empty, save for a few chairs draped with embroidery hoops, and an unattended lute resting by the hearth. The brazier is lit, thankfully, and the coals give off a faint hissing glow. You cross the room quickly, Balthazar already making a nest for himself under a bench. He stretches out with the exaggerated groan of someone who clearly suffered the ordeal of being a small dog in a cold castle, and you smile despite yourself. You take your usual seat, low-backed near the window but not in front of it, and unwrap the outermost shawl. Your knees settle against the edge of the brazier's warmth, and the heat seeps into you slowly, like a secret being shared between old friends. You sit there for a moment with your eyes closed, just breathing, just existing. There's a part of you that relishes this rare, delicate slice of solitude that arrives only when you rise earlier than required, before the rest of the household floods into the day. Here, there are no tutors correcting your Latin, no distant relatives commenting on your posture, no ladies-in-waiting measuring your reactions to gossip with surgical precision. Just you, the fire, and the sound of Balthazar gently licking one paw like he has no dignity left to protect. You take another breath and let your thoughts drift. This winter has been long, longer than usual. You can feel it not only in your bones but in the mood of the castle. Even the servants have grown quieter. Laughter echoes more faintly. Arguments die quicker. It's as if the stone itself is conserving energy, waiting for the first buds of green to reappear on the bare branches outside. You wonder sometimes what it would be like to sleep through winter entirely. Like the animals in the woods, deep, uninterrupted slumber until the ice melts and the rivers run fast again. To wake up with sunlight on your face and not remember the weeks of darkness, the cough, the cold sheets, the endless layers. Of course, you don't say this aloud. If you did, someone would call it melancholy, or worse, laziness. A princess must endure, your aunt once said, while wearing a gown so stuffed with goose feathers she couldn't bend at the waist. You endure. That's what you do. Through etiquette and feasts and freezing dawns, through nights when the wind sounds like screaming, through mornings like this where sitting upright feels like a small private war you've won. The door opens again, and you stiffen reflexively, ready to perform. But it's only the younger maid, the one with the burned fingertip and nervous smile. She sets a tray on the small table beside you, 2 pieces of dried apple, a lump of cheese, a steaming cup of tea with a slice of lemon floating on top. She doesn't speak, just bows slightly and disappears. You take the cup in your hands. It's hot enough to make your fingers sting. You welcome it. The sky remains stubbornly grey. Snow hasn't started, but you can feel it preparing. You wonder how much longer the frost will cling to the shutters. How many more nights your bones will crack as you lie down. How many more mornings like this. But not today. Today you're up, dressed, sitting by a fire, wrapped in more wool than any reasonable person should wear. And there's tea, and the dog is warm, and outside the world has not yet collapsed under the weight of its own cold. Today, that is enough. The snow finally comes just after mid-morning, beginning as a whisper, a hushed flutter against the stone window ledges, too light to hear but impossible to miss once you look outside. You're standing in the west corridor now, staring down into the courtyard, watching the first flakes spiral like drifting ash. It starts slowly, just a few scattered crystals dancing across the grey, but within minutes it thickens, as if the clouds have decided to empty themselves all at once. You don't say anything, you just watch. The castle, always slow to react, hasn't noticed yet. The bells don't ring, no servants scurry. It's like you're the only one who sees it. You reach out, your gloved fingers barely brushing the cold edge of the window, and for a moment you imagine opening it, just a little, letting the snow drift in and settle on your skin. But you don't. You're not feeling that reckless, not after last night's cough. The memory still lingers in your chest like smoke, and even now, the edge of your breath feels scratchy. The tea helped, and the fire, and the warmth of movement, but the cold waits for any excuse to climb back in. And snow? Snow is the excuse it's been waiting for. Still, there's something mesmerizing about it, the way it transforms everything. The dull stones of the courtyard soften under the white, the roof lines blur, the bare branches of the old yew trees turn delicate, laced with frost like the hem of a forgotten gown. The whole world slows, even time seems to hesitate. You've always liked the first snow of winter more than the middle or the end. By the time February rolls around, the snow has turned to rot, brown slush underfoot, melting icicles like dripping teeth, the ground mottled with footprints and wagon tracks. But this snow, this early snow, still feels clean, still feels like a promise instead of a punishment. Behind you, the corridor remains still. Tapestries barely move. The braziers flicker with their dull orange glow, scenting the air with warm iron and dried herbs. You could stay here all day, wrapped in this soft quiet, watching the snow bury the castle. But someone will find you eventually, and sure enough, not 15 minutes later, the footsteps begin. They echo in that uneven, unhurried way that tells you the person walking isn't rushing, but has a purpose. You don't turn around until she says your name, your full name, not the shortened version your friends use when they're trying to make you laugh. It's your mother, of course it is. She joins you by the window, hands clasped neatly in front of her, her shawl lined with fox fur and her sleeves perfectly embroidered. She looks, as always, untouched by discomfort, as if the cold only applies to lesser mortals. "It started," she says, her voice like parchment, crisp, quiet, carefully folded. You nod. "It's beautiful." She considers that. Yes, and inconvenient. You almost smile. This is her way of acknowledging the moment. She rarely speaks in compliments. She prefers observations with practical weight. "Are you feeling well enough to attend the midday meal?" she asks, and this time there's the faintest note of concern buried beneath the formality. You could pretend not to hear it, but you don't. "I am," you reply, "just a little sore in the throat." "I slept mostly well." She looks at you sideways. "You didn't call for the physician." "I didn't need to. Yet." That's her compromise. She won't press further, but she's noted it, tucked the concern away like a letter in her sleeve. It'll return later, during the meal, or perhaps when she sends your maid with an extra tonic you didn't request. You turn your gaze back to the snow. It's falling faster now, thick and steady, layering the courtyard in white. Your mother speaks again. Your grandmother used to say the first snow always knew where to land. You glance at her. That's not one of her usual lines. You don't remember your grandmother much, only fragments. Her rings, her scent, the way she wore her shawl over just one shoulder. But this phrase feels real, like something that might have been passed down on purpose. What did she mean? She never explained, your mother says, just said it every year, and then stared at the garden as if she expected the snow to answer her. You nod slowly. Maybe it does. She hums at that. Not agreement, not disagreement, just a sound. She doesn't linger. A few moments more, then she leaves, her footsteps retreating down the hall, measured and elegant. She's already thinking about the next item on her day's list. You don't blame her. She doesn't have the luxury of letting snow enchant her for too long. Neither do you, really. But you linger anyway. You stay until the flakes begin to stick to the window's outer ledge, and the courtyard is blanketed. Until the guards at the gate swap posts and stamp their boots against the cold. Until your nose begins to tingle and your fingers ache through your gloves. Only then do you step back. When you return to your chambers, they feel warmer than before. Not by much, but enough. The fire is lit now, a good one, properly stoked. The bed has been made. The tray by your chair holds another cup of tea, this one laced with lemon peel and a curl of cinnamon bark. You sit slowly, wrapping yourself in the shawl you left behind earlier, and feel the warmth sink in. Your thoughts drift, not to the day's duties, not yet, but to the night ahead, to the bed, the blankets, the silence, the dog curled at your feet, the long cold battle that waits under the veil of sleep. You know it will come again, as it always does. But you also know something now you didn't know yesterday. You've endured it before, you'll endure it again, and tomorrow, just maybe, there will be a little less snow, a little more light, a little more spring, and now, the snow still falling quietly outside, the fire in your chamber burning low and steady, you begin to settle once more beneath the weight of every careful layer. The day has come and gone, and though it brought its usual games of duty and endurance, it didn't take more than it gave. That alone feels like a quiet victory. Balthazar is already asleep, curled like a warm comma at the base of the bed, his tail twitching now and then in some tiny dog dream. The shutters have been drawn closed again, shielding you from the deepening dark, and the scent of lavender and rosemary from the herbal pouches beneath your pillows hangs faintly in the air. A candle flickers on the nightstand, its light soft and slow, casting long shadows across the canopy drapes. You let your eyes follow them for a while, your breath slowing with each pass. The cold hasn't left, of course, it never really does, but it no longer owns the room. You've earned this peace, this stillness, the reward for one more night weathered, one more morning met. The castle is quiet. The storm outside will keep falling until dawn, and the world beyond your chamber will disappear under its hush. But in here, in this small cocoon of blankets and breath, there is calm, warmth, sleep waiting just beyond your final thought. So let yourself drift now. Let your limbs go heavy, your mind soften, your lungs fill slow and deep with the hush of the hour. The cold will still be here tomorrow, but so will you, and if you're lucky, maybe the snow will remember where to land.